Good morning, and thanks for joining us today for our annual event, Kentucky Animal Action Day. This event will be recorded and available for viewing after the event through your Zoom registration or on Facebook Live. I'm Michelle Lawson, founder and president of Kentucky Animal Action. We're a grassroots organization based here in Kentucky. We created this organization to make Kentucky a better place for animals, which we think will make the state better for all inhabitants. Kentucky Animal Action Day is held to provide animal advocates with the tools they need to take action for Kentucky animals. We want to help you be efficient and effective. We want to help you help them. Meeting with your legislators face-to-face has always been an important part of the annual event, and it's usually in Frankfort at the Capitol. As you know, the pandemic has affected almost every corner of every single human being's life, including animal welfare efforts. It's unfortunate that the event has to be virtual this year because in person is so much better, and there's really no replacement for face-to-face meetings with your legislators. But I promise we're going to get back to that as soon as possible, and we can still make a difference for Kentucky animals in 2021. While there's no legislator meetings today, we'll provide you with the tools to be effective animal welfare advocates, which includes helpful tips on meeting with them virtually. Even though everyone has to meet with their legislators virtually this year, effective animal welfare advocacy is still possible. The good news is everyone else is in the same boat that we're in, so we charge forward for the animals. As many of you know, Kentucky was ranked in last place for 12 consecutive years for animal welfare and protections. Actually, we were ranked 54th because if you count the territories, we were also behind Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Washington, D.C., placing us at 54th place. We finally got animal sexual assault banned in 2019. We moved up in the rankings to 47th in the country. Prior to that, animal sexual assault was not illegal in Kentucky, and abusers couldn't be charged with abuse unless the animal showed visible physical injury. But thankfully, sex with animals is now illegal in Kentucky. While that improvement is awesome, and I'm glad to be part of our state's better protections for animals, 47th is still at the bottom of the rankings, and there's still a lot of work to do here. Last year, we got vet reporting passed. Until 2020, it was illegal in Kentucky for a vet to report abuse of one of their patients. Kentucky was the only state that had that doozy of legislation, making it illegal for vets to report abuse. However, vets can now report abuse of one of their patients. Thank goodness for that. We want to make Kentucky a better place for animals, and we want to do that with you. We have a heck of a day lined up for you today. We'll have an education and awareness session this morning with expert speakers who'll give you some very powerful information about our theme for this year's event, cost of care. Then we'll have a short break that will also be time for Q&A. And then we'll have the always awesome Kentuckians Vote for Animals rally at 12:15. Almost everything we go over today will have supplemental documents for you to reference in a folder that we put out there publicly for you. I'll give you the address in just a second. I'd like to say that nothing we say here today is legal advice, and anytime you have concerns about an animal in need, please always contact your local officials first and get their guidance on how to proceed. Here's the link to the documents we put out there for reference. Please jot this address down. There's all kinds of helpful documents in there. Check it out. I think you'll find it helpful. Please note that it is case sensitive. So you need to capitalize the KAAD. So the address is http://bit.ly/KAAD21 handouts. And KAAD is capitalized. Cost of care is the theme for this year's event, and it's also the priority legislation for the 2021 legislative session for Kentucky Animal Action. It's our priority legislation. You're going to hear a lot about cost of care today from our speakers, but for those that don't already know, let me explain what cost of care is. Cost of care legislation would require an individual to pay for the cost of care of the animals that were seized from them due to cruelty, or allow them to forfeit the animals and not have to pay for the cost. The individual would be paying the cost while the animals were being taken care of by the seizing agency or animal control shelter rescue vet, depending on the case, whose care they're going to be in. An individual being charged with an animal crime might not want to pay for the cost of caring for the animals that were seized from them, or they might not be able to pay for the cost of care. So they would have a chance to forfeit as well in this legislation. So cost of care legislation would make it possible to cover the cost of caring for the animals during a court case, or the owner could forfeit them, allowing the animals to move on to rescue or adopter. This would save counties money and therefore save the state money in the long run. Many cruelty cases are never pursued because the county just doesn't have the money or resources to pay for it, and they realize that sometimes this stuff's going to be really expensive. So this would not only save the counties and state money, it would also allow for more animal cruelty cases to be pursued because they know the cost is going to be covered. For instance, Fayette County seized 135 cats from one house. The case took over a year to be resolved in court, and those costs ended up being $80,000, which is more than most counties. That happened in a big county in Kentucky, so they're a little better off financially, but still, that was a huge hit. This is a great year to pass cost of care legislation because it's a budget year and money is really, really tight. All states are looking for a way to cut costs in the budget. Cost of care is helpful in that regard. Be sure to ask your legislators to support cost of care. There's two cost of care and forfeiture bills out there right now. Both of them are in the House. Both of them need post-seizure birth protections to be added to them. This means that if they bust a hoarding situation and there's 100 dogs, 20 might be pregnant females. Post-seizure birth protections would protect the litters that are born after the seizure. Otherwise, the former owner could potentially fight to get the puppies right back into the hoarding situation, or they may not end up having to pay for cost of care for those litters born after seizure. So post-seizure birth protection is badly needed and would apply to many of the cases that are pursued. We hope to see cost of care legislation introduced in the Senate as well, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Almost 40 other states have enacted cost of care legislation to save agency resources, taxpayer dollars, and animal lives. So we really need to get this. I get asked all the time, what can I do to help? Tell me where to start. And, I think about it all the time. What's a good way to answer? And we've come up with this acronym to maybe help people have in the back of their minds, kind of start forming a plan to help. Law, legislators and local officials, awareness and education, working together in unity. The L in law, forming a healthy relationship with legislators, is single-handedly the very most important thing you can do if you want to help animals in Kentucky. Forming healthy relationships with your legislators, they don't know that animal welfare is important to you unless you tell them. They represent you, but you have to let them know what that means, and this is where you truly become a voice for the voiceless. You have to let them know that animal welfare is important to you. Under normal circumstances, I'd recommend that you ask your legislators for coffee in your local district or set up a meeting with them at the Capitol. But as you know, we're not in normal circumstances. So you can invite them to a virtual coffee or something like that. But remember, the most important thing you can do to help animals in Kentucky is have healthy relationships with your legislators. They're elected officials by Kentucky constituents, and they have no idea what's important to you unless you tell them. The A in law, awareness and education are key. Recognize that education and awareness are key. Educate yourself, educate others. Know the local ordinances in your city or county. Know your state statutes and animal welfare protections, where they lack and what is still needed. Know what legislation your legislators are working on or have gotten passed. If you like it, let them know that you like it. If they're currently working on it, thank them and tell them that they have your support. Sometimes it helps to go outside the box and let them know that you may be supporting legislation that doesn't necessarily have to do with animals also, and that you appreciate the work they're doing as a whole. Legislators represent you, but you have to let them know what's important to you in order for them to do so. And when you meet with your legislators, it helps to walk into that meeting or walk into that virtual meeting bearing knowledge about the subject matter and know what you're talking about. It'll give weight and merit to your request to them. It's difficult for them to take you seriously if you walk in and seem like you don't know what you're talking about. So just make sure you're educated about what you're going to talk to them about. If you're asking them to support a specific legislation, make sure you've read the proposed bill and even have a copy of it to share with them. Do some research, see what works in other states, see if some counties have ordinances with the same subject matter. And also with awareness, it also applies to community. People often don't know that something is a problem unless you make them aware. And helping raise awareness about how the community can help make a difference is helpful too. It's a lot easier to get community involvement if they know what's needed from them. And finally, the W in law, working together. The third thing you can do to help Kentucky animals and to successfully getting pro-animal welfare legislation passed is working together in unity. We all have our strengths and access to certain resources. No one's good at everything, but if you get a team together, each person on that team has their own strengths. Suddenly you have a team that's good at everything or most things. Also, working as a team means that we're all on the same page about what we're trying for. You can break off into smaller groups and concentrate on certain things, but we support each other's efforts to make the state a better place for animals. Armed with knowledge, a group that's good at everything, prepared to speak to your legislators, and showing up in large numbers, we are no doubt stronger as a team, and now you've become a force to be reckoned with, and you'll have the tools you need to get pro-animal welfare legislation passed in Kentucky. We recognize that unity is so important that we've actually made it part of Kentucky Animal Action's mission. Just a quick refresher: law, legislators, awareness, and working together. That's how you make Kentucky a better place for animals. And what are we looking like on time? Has Senator McGarvey joined us? All right, let's, I think we have a poll. Can we pop one of those polls up? Okay, if everyone on can answer this poll, this is a pretty neat little option on the Zoom. Everybody participates, and then we'll be able to show you what the results are once everyone has voted. All right. Oh, cool. Looks like about 88% of people that are on today are animal lovers or advocates. We have 12% that are shelter volunteers, 4% shelter employees, 32% rescue volunteer or staff, and we have 24% other. Would love to know what that 24% consists of. Good deal. All right. Let me see. All right. Looks like we have time for another poll. Thank you, Leedy, for posting that link and the questions. That is the correct link. I believe it will work. I believe that's the correct link. Let me know if anybody has trouble with that link. All right. So we have Senator Morgan McGarvey. Senator McGarvey represents the 19th District of Jefferson County. He's one of the nation's youngest members across state legislators to serve as party floor leader. He's active in our community, involved in domestic violence programs, and has coached baseball, soccer, and basketball. He happens to be some of my family members and one of our board members' senator. He lights up every room he speaks in. So without further ado, Senator McGarvey.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope you can hear and see me. I wish we were together in person today, but I'm so glad we're getting together to still to activate and to advocate for animal welfare in Kentucky. You mentioned that I coached basketball, soccer, and baseball. I'm so glad also you didn't give my winning record for those sports because just because I did it doesn't mean I did it well. But I do miss the kids this year during COVID and some of the sports as well. So let's talk about Kentucky Animal Action. And I want to start off by saying something not about Kentucky Animal Action, in fact, but I think it's worth noting. The Courier-Journal released a report just this week, which shows that Kentucky, for the third year in a row, we are number one in the country for child abuse. This is not a statistic we want to be anywhere close to even the top 10, much less number one. For the third year in a row, we lead the country in child abuse. The reason I bring this up is because as we're trying to combat that terrible atrocity, we know that there is a link between animal abuse and domestic abuse, whether that's domestic violence to a spouse or to a partner, whether that's abuse to a child. And so as we're combating these terrible things in Kentucky, I think we also need to look at some of the original sources. When we talk about animal welfare, this is it. So the bad news is we have a lot of work to do. Let's talk about some of the good news and some of the things we've actually been able to accomplish. We've done some really good things. When I started in the legislature, Kentucky had an absolutely abysmal record for animal welfare. And we've done some good things and passed some laws and made some headway in that direction. There's still work to do. So I think we've got some good support this year behind being able to rescue animals who are stuck and trapped in hot cars. It has passed the Senate. Now we just have to get it to pass the House. So I think we'll hopefully make some progress on that this year. I'm also excited about some of the initiatives coming up that we're hearing about in terms of actually reimbursing and paying people who are providing care for animals who have been abused, that have been rescued, and someone who's being tried for the abuse of those animals, so that we can actually have care reimbursed for those animals who are being maintained after they've been rescued from their abusers. So some good things going. And of course, we all know we have a lot of work to do, but we will do it. And you have committed representatives and senators from both parties in the legislature in Frankfort who are willing to make this happen. And of course, no one is more important than you all are. You all know exactly the fight that's in front of us, and you all are willing to put yourselves out there as people who I saw in the poll, 88% identify just as an animal lover and advocate. And it's so great to have so many animal lovers and advocates willing to give a voice to these animals who need it. So thank you all so much for the work you do. Please know we are excited to be working with you. And even though we can't be together in person this year, look forward to working with you on this, and of course, getting together with everybody when it's safe.
Thank you, Senator McGarvey. We're so glad you joined us this morning. It's always a pleasure talking to you and having you join us. And you're a hero for not only humans, but also the animals. And we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I think we also have Senator Rocky Adams joining us at 10. And we are so thankful that you guys have taken the time to come out and meet us. I know that things are super busy right now and everything's kind of weird with everybody having to meet virtually. And I know it's difficult to get some time to do that. So we really thank you for taking the time to come out and meet with us.
No, thank you guys. In fact, I'm going to head to Frankfort here shortly. You guys probably know, it's like, hey, where is he? I'm still at my house because our youngest, we have a 2.5-year-old, and her daycare is shut down right now because of COVID. So with my wife on a call in the other room, she's like, you can't leave just yet. I'm here. And I will say, in terms of the animal world, it's been interesting in COVID, dealing with pets and that sort of thing. So I think, I don't know if it's official yet, but I think she's here, right? So when I say we think we're going to adopt, she's already here. We think we're about to adopt, to add to the animals, a one-eyed guinea pig
cool.
who was dropped. So that's the latest COVID addition to our house. So yeah, it's fun here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm actually very excited because this year is the first time that there's ever been an adopted dog in the White House.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool to see those dogs walk in there and have animals back in the White House, and to have a rescue is cool.
Yeah, good deal. Well, good luck with the new guinea pig, and thank you for all that you do.
No, thank you guys so much.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right. I think we have another poll for you guys. A poll set up. We tried to put together some interesting things that we thought you guys might enjoy. All right. Everybody could answer the poll that is up, and we'll let you know what the results of that are. Why are you attending Kentucky Animal Action Day? 11% said to learn how to be a better advocate and engage with your legislators. 4% said to learn about animal welfare advocacy and possibilities in the state. And 81% said all of the above. 4% did say other, though. I would be curious to know what that was. It's too bad they don't let you have a blank for the other so somebody could type something in. All right, next up is retired LMPD Lieutenant Joy Keeley. She is what I consider a whiz with numbers and statistics. She's also a phenomenal investigator, and I feel so lucky to have her on the board of Kentucky Animal Action. Joy?
Hey, thanks for having me. And I'm just going to be showing you real quick some slides that I've done about my study. I'm going to 3-year study on animal cruelty in the state of Kentucky, because as Michelle said earlier, education is key. And you have to know what exactly is going on in Kentucky to be able to better educate yourself, your legislators, and other people. So that's exactly what this Kentucky cruelty study is about, is to find out exactly what we're seeing in Kentucky. We know what we see locally, and we know what we might see on the news occasionally, but this will give more information for everybody. But understand that this is not what I'm going to show you is not all of the cruelty that happens in Kentucky. This is just the ones that have been reported to the police and animal control, and the ones I was able to get the records on. Generally, I have all law enforcement records. Animal control was more problematic because they do not have a centralized database that the law enforcement have in Kentucky. So, I don't have everything, but this is what I do have. This was in 2018, the hoarding cases that I came up with in 2018. Blue means there was 1 case, yellow means there was 2 cases, and red means 3 or more cases. Now, understand as well that when you see red, that doesn't mean that's a horrible county. What that means is that county is really doing their job in finding the people are reporting these cases, and either animal control or law enforcement is going out to do enforcement on these cases. So red does not mean there's a huge problem there. You probably got more problems than the ones that don't have any colors, because there's either not being reported or they're not being enforced. So I just want to make that really clear. In 2018, and also let me tell you that hoarding cases, as Dr. Randor is going to talk to you later about, this is not the primary means of people committing cruelty to animals, but what makes it significant is the amount of animals that are abused in these cases. There's 7% of the cases in the animal abuse cases in 2018 in Kentucky were hoarding cases, but they accounted for 67% of the animals reported abused. That's huge. And that's also why we need a cost of care, because these poor counties that are doing the work, they don't have any place to put these animals, or if they do, they're paying out a ton of money to care for them, which means the taxpayers are paying out a ton of money to care for them. When in reality, it should be the abuser that's either caring for them or allowing them to go on to rescue or be adopted. So this is why this is important. In 2019, I don't have all the cases yet. I don't have, I'm still getting from Kentucky State Police and others the reports that I've requested through open records. But once again, we have 5% of the animal abuse cases were hoarding cases, but they accounted for 54% of the animals reported abused so far. So this is a huge problem in Kentucky. It's a huge problem across the United States. But in Kentucky, we need the law, as they have passed in other states, to better be able to help the animals, get them out of a hoarding situation, get them out of a shelter situation, and into loving homes, and have the taxpayer not pay the burden of caring for these animals. And I'm done. Thanks.
All right. So I believe we have Jeremy Logsdon up next. Jeremy is the county attorney in Grayson County. He spent the majority of his career as a prosecutor and maintains a private practice as well. He currently serves on the board of directors for the Kentucky County Attorney Association. Mr. Logsdon and his wife are also attempting to raise a 13-year-old and a 3-year-old son without losing their minds.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Am I okay to go ahead?
Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for letting me be part of this. I'm Jeremy Logsdon. I'm out of Grayson County. county attorney. I've been a prosecutor for, I guess, about a decade. I've only been practicing law for about 12 years, but I've always wanted to be a prosecutor and enjoy the challenge of that. I'm here to talk about some of my experiences in struggling as a new county attorney when faced with the problem of hoarding animals. Really, we've seen a lot of animal abuse here, and the systems that we have set up here in my county and also in the state really are frustrating. There needs to be a change. I think that Joy has probably previewed that already with a statute that I'll discuss, but I'll try to stay on task here today and fill my time here with useful information, at least through some of, at least an example of one of my experiences. Throughout my career as a prosecutor, I've encountered behavior that you could describe as hoarding behavior. Not just animals, but, rat harborage, junk, trash. These we encounter kind of on a regular basis, and we try to do the best we can to change those people's behavior. And it is frustrating because there's a lot of mental illness involved. There's a whole section of, I guess, mental illness that addresses this. But specifically on the situation of hoarding animals, we've had one major hoarding case in the past year, but we have received several different, I guess, cases or investigations that involved large numbers of animals that have been starved or left in conditions where they have a lack of care, lack of food, water, etc. I'm not an expert in this area, but along the way in trying to change and address these issues appropriately here, I have learned some lessons. And so hopefully I can share a little bit of insight with you concerning that matter. Well, one thing that I've discovered is that no hoarding situation necessarily has a perfect answer. And part of that is due to the fact of the status of the law. Our goal has been just the best outcome available. And really, we struggled to get to that point, to be honest with you. Our big case that did not hit the press was that we had a lineman who was working for Warren RECC had discovered, I guess, called in a tip that there was a hoarding situation. Ultimately, it involved 88 canines. And we were confronted with a difficult situation because our law enforcement here, even though they've been educated, Joy has come down and spoke to a lot of our officers in charge. They're very hesitant to pursue these cases as they normally would, a normal crime. And so because of their hesitance, we end up in kind of a confusing state where myself, along with the head of the city shelter here, Jessica Williams, and along with our animal control officer, we've kind of muddle our way through and try to do the best we can. In that situation, we had faced whether or not to get a search warrant. My counterpart with the city had made contact with the lady that was hoarding these animals. And basically, as I understood it, yeah, bring Jessica in. This is Jessica. This is who I'm referring to. You can just have a seat back there, Jessica. We're live right now. The situation had seemed that the lady that was hoarding these animals had kind of seen herself as a rescue, and it had got way out of hand. The animals were caged in very small areas where instead of cleaning out the cages, they would just put more straw at the bottom. So ultimately you had animals that couldn't even stand up correctly once they were outside of the cage. The problem is that we have this balance in those situations of the need for the beginning of a strong prosecution, and we'll get to why that's important, versus the logistics of how do we best get these animals out of the situation and into a place that they can be cared for appropriately. Normally in a criminal case, in this situation, we consider doing a search warrant. At that point, what would happen is the police would come in, she would be detained, and the property would be searched for evidence of this animal cruelty, which was this strong neglect to the point of mistreatment. If we did that, the problem was that if we got a search warrant, then these animals, because they're property under the law, would be seized just like a stolen television or stolen auto parts. And they would be our responsibility to maintain as evidence. And when you have 88 dogs, that's not something that we want to hold and pay for their care, because we weren't equipped to do that. We want to find them new homes as soon as possible, either foster or, send them to other places that they can be rehabilitated. So in that situation, what we were trying to avoid was, one, we're just trying to reach that best outcome. And so we did not do the search warrant. We ended up actually having a high level of cooperation from the defendant. And we signed an agreement with her that if she fully cooperated, that she would still be charged, but basically she wouldn't go to jail. Now, that is counterintuitive to the need for strong prosecution, because we want a strong prosecution because, one, we want to send the message to others. When something hits the press like that, hopefully we'll let people know that these, not only that they'll be punished, but these situations are real and they're probably occurring on property that you would never suspect. And also, by starting a search warrant like that, it starts the ball rolling. If she's arrested and we have the normal, hallmarks of a normal prosecution, then we kind of roll into, it gives us better leverage down the road. However, the biggest problem is the lack in the law of having the funds to maintain these animals while they're just sitting as evidence, basically, while the case continues on. Even before COVID, it would take us a year or 2 years to get a simple misdemeanor like this to trial. That's a long time to care for animals, and very costly. And our county is not willing to pay for that. Those costs are kind of supplemented by our local humane society, but even they have limits. And so that maintaining is the biggest issue. Also, you have vet bills. We've had a situation in cases where we've had local vets kind of do some things against our case, and then also try to charge late fees if we've got pending some, we know in the end that we're probably going to be able to get this person to be locked in to have to pay these bills. But along the way, if you have the only local vet who is charging late fees, that creates an issue as well. So this kind of rough situation that we try to deal with, we don't have a lot of support. The animal control will kind of have limited powers. Judges tend to get a little unpredictable in these cases, I've found, at least in my experience. And local enforcement, there's a strong, at least in my experience, a strong resistance to even becoming involved, because they don't know how it's supposed to work. They only want to pursue a case if they're pretty confident in what they're supposed to do. and what's going to happen down the road. And these just are not that situation based on the law. We've also had situations where we're trying to we have to make agreements at the beginning of a case where we don't get to prosecute them as fully, where we're trying to get the animals out of the possession of individuals. Not just for this situation, but we've encountered defenses such as, well, it's not my animal, it's this third party's animal. And so then we have to kind of make a deal with that person to lessen their jail time, to induce their relative or friend to sign over that animal. Also, we have the concern in dealing with these cases that once we get to jury trial, our culture here in this county, I would say at best, is wishy-washy concerning these cases. We don't know what a jury's going to do. I mean, they could hammer these people or they could just let it go. It's hard to get a read on it, but you know, we have a lot of people that have pets, that have animals, but they just don't get the connection. There's still a strong, I guess, opinion here with a lot of people, citizens, that they're just property, and some people don't see that they have a duty or responsibility while we're here on this earth to try to protect these animals that are such an important part of kind of our lifestyle. I mean, historically and presently. But so we're also working, trying to change that culture, and prosecution is necessary, I think, to change that culture. Whether we go to a jury and we convince 6 people on our district court jury on that day, then they're going to tell their friends, or if it's through the press. But being hamstrung by these costs and the uncertainty of where these animals are going to be and our rights to be able to move them on where they need to go really counteracts that need for that prosecution. Recently, we just had another hoarding case. It was less numbers, but it was basically a mobile hoarder. We had an individual that was, how many animals did she have, Jessica?
Which one?
The DUI, the railroad tracks.
We started with 9 chihuahuas, but they have multiplied. We're up to 16 now.
Okay, so she had 9 chihuahuas in a hatchback, and was basically just living in her vehicle with these 9 chihuahuas. Well, they
were pregnant when we got them.
They were pregnant when we got them, and now there's 16 of them. And so, you know, we didn't make an agreement with her. She wants them back. We want to move them on. We can't have trials during COVID, according to the Supreme Court. And so we're stuck, footing the bill for those until we don't know when, because part of this mental illness is the denial that there's a situation, that there's something that they've done wrong.
And we can't spay neuter them in the meantime.
And so we can't, spay or neuter them in the meantime, but it's just a lot of different struggles. So I'm not sure how much time I got left. I don't think much. But one thing I do want to do is plug the House Bill 100. I know that there's a few animal bills out there right now, but this is one that Joy turned me on to, and it's one that I have discussed with the County Attorney Association board. There's so much legislation being jammed in right now that we're trying to protect certain things, but this one got a positive response from the board. I can't say that we represent any kind of opinion about it at this point. I can't say that on behalf of the board, but there was a positive response to it, and I'm 100% behind it because it allows for that cost of care to be billed to the individual who's responsible for this. Hopefully, within the next few years, hopefully this will pass this year. And then hopefully we can get such a program here that we have a nice structure to prosecute these cases. In prosecuting them, we can help change our culture. I can only focus on my county because change is hard enough in one county versus the state. But, that's our plan. And I think that House Bill 100 will really supplement that. Currently, we're about to have our second reading of our own county ordinance that addresses some issues. And part of that includes some of that cost of care responsibility for certain situations. So I think that, if you work with your county, if they don't have an ordinance, I certainly would encourage you to speak with them about that. And then also, talk to your representatives, your senators, whoever out there has a vote on this bill, and try to get it on the books to help us out. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's my presentation for today.
Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Logsdon. I'd like to say that you clearly are a hero for the animals, and we need more people like you. And I'd like to say absolutely prosecuting or taking things to the legal level definitely makes a difference. It makes a statement every time. As a matter of fact, when I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw was a story about someone shooting a donkey that was someone's pet. And that's in southern Indiana. And they pursued bullet forensics and actually did ballistics, and they traced that bullet to the neighbor. And they are now prosecuting the neighbor for shooting the donkey. The donkey did die. And they're even going to take it a step further. The donkey survived for 12 hours, and they're actually going to go after them for suffering as well. But I was super excited to hear ballistics were performed on an animal case. I'm sure maybe it's been done before, but that's the first time I've ever heard of it. And I think every time you prosecute a case, or every time something like doing ballistics on a bullet for an animal, I think it makes a statement, and I think it's changing the culture, and I think it's a huge deal. Also, I wanted to go back to the Chihuahuas and the car that ended up being pregnant. If we get cost of care legislation passed, it would help that. And if we could get the language added for post-seizure births to cover the puppies that were born after you guys seized them, that would be great. And I want to thank you for being on with us today, and thank you for being a hero for the animals. Thank you too, Jessica. We appreciate your work
I
as
didn't know you
well.
could see me.
Yes, thank you all. And we're going to tune in here for a while. So thank you all.
Okay, great. All right. Next up is Dr. Mary Lou Randor. Dr. Randor is a psychologist. She's a senior advisor with animal cruelty programs and training at the Animal Welfare Institute in Washington, D.C. Among other major and noteworthy accomplishments, she was a clinical fellow in psychology at Cambridge Hospital at Harvard Medical School. She's the author of handbooks such as A Common Bond, Child Maltreatment and Animals in the Family, as well as Anacare Child, a treatment approach for children who abuse animals. In her career, Dr. Randor has worked for a federal research funding agency and enjoyed a private practice of almost 20 years. She now devotes her knowledge of psychology to advance animal protection and its connection to human welfare, working in partnership with organizations such as the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, the Battered Women's Justice Project, the FBI, the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges, the National Animal Care and Control Association, the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, and the National Sheriff's Association. And all I can say is that I told her this morning that her bio blew me away, because that is quite the list of accomplishments. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Randor. The floor is yours, and I believe that you are muted.
Now I'm free. I can talk and you can hear me. First of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this important endeavor. I have worked with Joy for a number of years now, and we were emailing one another. I told her I was looking forward to the time when we could see one another in person again, not just a virtual setup. So I'm going to talk a little bit about animal hoarding, and as Jeremy and the other speakers have referred to it, they're difficult cases to handle in general. And one of the problems, and other people have mentioned this too, is that so many animals suffer when there is animal hoarding. There are estimates from surveys of animal control agencies and humane societies that approximately 3,000 reportable cases of animal hoarding in a year. And then the SPCA estimates that there are 250,000 victims of animal hoarding each year. So I think somebody gave the statistic that sometimes there are as many as 90 animals in one particular hoarding case. So if you do your math, if there were 3,000 reportable cases and there were 90 animals within each case, then you would get actually somewhat over 250,000. But the message is there are just a lot of animals that suffer as a result of this practice. Regrettably, not regrettably, but animal cruelty was added to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is the system the FBI uses to keep track of crime. Convincing the FBI to include animal cruelty as a separate category was a 12-year effort, but they did the right thing. And they have been collecting statistics on animal cruelty since 2016. Regrettably, animal hoarding is not a subcategory. There are 4 subcategories of animal cruelty, according to the FBI: neglect, intentional, animal fighting, and animal sexual assault. There's always room to go back to the FBI, and there's a process you have to go through, which is pretty challenging to get them to make changes. But certainly I think one change that would be good to request would be to differentiate hoarding from the neglect and intentional cases, so that we could get a better count on it. So hoarding disorder, which is usually referred to as hoarding disorder in general, is human beings hoarding objects, balls of twine, books, newspapers, whatever it is. That became an official diagnosis of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, in 2013. Before then, hoarding was considered a part of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, but with some kind of new information, it no longer is. And the chief difference between hoarding and OCD is that hoarders often don't have insight into how serious their disorder really is. Where somebody with OCD, let's say, who is compulsively checks the stove every time they leave and has to come back after they've driven to their office after 5 minutes to make sure the stove is off, as one kind of compulsive behavior, they're aware that this behavior is not a good thing. And so in psychological parlance, that's called ego dystonic. There's the person realizes there's something wrong here. Whereas with hoarders, they're often not aware that there's a problem. And so that would be called ego syntonic. They're perfectly fine with their behavior. And because of this, the difference between hoarding and OCD is that hoarders often don't have insight into how serious their disorder really is or how serious the situation is. And it's been referred to by previous speakers, animals are considered property. So it would appear that animal hoarding would qualify as a hoarding disorder, in other words, a separate category in the DSM. However, it's still not clearly identified in the psychiatric literature. And that's because they don't have quite enough information about it yet. The reason the diagnosis is important is the diagnosis will determine in part what kind of treatments work. But anyway, animal hoarding is defined as a condition associated with eat with hoarding disorder, in which there is an accumulation of a large number of animals and a failure to provide minimal standards, nutrition, sanitation, and veterinary care. And there are deteriorating conditions of the animal and the environment. So it is almost an official category of hoarding disorder in the DSM, and but not quite yet. So what are the similarities between object hoarding and animal hoarding? The similarities and differences between object hoarding and animal hoarding. Well, the similarities in both cases, the person has an exaggerated need to control, exaggerated sense of responsibility, and an intense emotional attachment to the hoarded objects or animals. And sometimes that's difficult to understand. For example, in object hoarding, if somebody was hoarding magazines and newspapers and they could no longer, barely get to the bathroom and kitchen, how do they have such an intense desire to that object? But the mind can do odd things. I know there are people with anorexia who might weigh 89 pounds and be so thin they look like they're on the verge of death, and some do die, and they can look in the mirror and see themselves as fat. So our minds can play tricks on us. Other similarity is the urge to acquire objects or animals is intense, and parting with them causes great distress. So there's a lot of intensity between the person and the object or the animal that they're hoarding. The differences, however, is that in a way, animal hoarding cases are more difficult. They often involve squalid living conditions, unlike object hoarding, which isn't necessarily the case. The sex ratio of object hoarders to animal is about even, whereas animal hoarders are predominantly female. I'd be interested in hearing from you who are on the front lines if that has been your experience. And also animal hoarders may exhibit delusional abilities to communicate and understand their animals, should know what their animals are thinking. So there is more, animal hoarders have more kind of a delusional approach. As I mentioned before, and others have, the effects of hoarding, well, there's suffering of thousands of animals, and probably 250,000 is not even an accurate assessment. I'm glad that Joy is starting to collect statistics in Kentucky so we can kind of get a better sense of how much damage is done. Animal hoarding also results in significantly more unsanitary conditions than object hoarding does. And it not only endangers the health, obviously, of the animals, but the human occupants and even the community at large, the neighborhood. Lack of proper sanitation appears in between 70 and 90% of animal hoarding cases. Therefore, there's also a likelihood of zoonotic diseases. And then again, animal hoarders also may be hoarding inanimate possessions. Where do they come from? How does someone become an animal hoarder? Well, what they know is they come from a variety of backgrounds. In 3 studies, about 70 to 80% of the animal hoarders were women, and they often were single, divorced, or widowed. The behavior appears to develop in middle age or later, although research actually is lacking on this point. Again, this is the best information we have about hoarding to date, but I think everybody would agree it's not quite good enough yet. And from half to nearly 3/4 of the individuals in these studies were single, widowed, or divorced, like I had mentioned earlier. And some did live with other individuals, including children or elders. So the children and elders are also involved in the unsanitary conditions along with the animals. The cats and then dogs are the most frequently hoarded. In some studies, farm animals and birds are also reported with some frequency, between 11 and 17%, according to some studies that were done. And from 35 to 70% of cases involve single species, like only dogs or only cats. However, there obviously also are many cases where there are two species or more. And then again, the typical number of cases range from 10 to 900. So when you start thinking 10 to 900, the idea of costs of care becomes even more important. The people who have spent the most time trying to understand hoarding and talking about it, Gary Petronic, who's at Tufts University, and Randy Frost, and they have come up with 3 classifications of animal hoarders. Now, these 3 classifications are suggestions, not firm, because again, we don't have enough complete evidence, but I'd be interested in the reactions of those who deal with animal hoarders and see what you think about these 3 categories. One is, and I think Jeremy mentioned this, in the case that he just talked about, there's the overwhelmed caregiver. They own a large number of animals in their life, and then something happens. They either lose their job, they become ill, there's a death in the family, there's a disruption, and therefore they're not able to provide adequate care and are overwhelmed. They often exhibit more awareness and tend to minimize rather than deny. Now, it may not be good to minimize what you're doing, the effects of what you're doing, but it's better than denying them, because at least there's an opening. They understand that this isn't a good situation. And because of that, they're more likely to comply with intervention efforts. And I guess in the case you mentioned too, that this woman did. Rescuers, kind of a notch up. They have a strong sense of mission to save animals. They have very fervent, intense views. They probably oppose euthanasia under any circumstances and have strong fears that their animals will die. Their acquisition efforts are more active than passive, whereas in the overwhelmed caregiver, that person might have a number of dogs because, you know, a friend said, I can't keep this dog, would you mind? Or I know somebody who is going to put this dog down, but I think it's okay. And so the overwhelmed caregiver says, okay, I'll take it. But in the rescuers, they actively, proactively seek out other animals to bring into their household. And as you can imagine, they're probably harder to deal with in terms of reaching them in any way. So mission-driven animal hoarders go to great lengths to avoid authorities and avoid them at all costs. At the same time, this person can present themselves as being a very organized individual, representing an institution, or even masquerading as representatives of a legitimate shelter or sanctuary. So they can put on a good front and appear functioning. Exploiters is a third category, and this is, as the term implies, individuals with sociopathic characteristics. Unlike the overwhelmed caregiver or the rescuer, they really don't have attachment to animals. They lack empathy for the animals, but also in general for humans. And their absence of emotional attachment to animals suggests that these individuals may not fit into the diagnostic criteria for hoarding disorder. Because remember, when I was talking about hoarding disorder earlier, there's this intense attachment to the object or the animal, but in the case of exploiters, there's not. And there's very little research done on, as I mentioned, on the classifications for animal hoarding. So little is known about how many people fall within 3 groups. And I'm interested in your ideas too about exploiters, because certainly they do seem to represent a different type of animal hoarder. So what's the background of the histories of animal hoarders? Well, their parents were unstable, neglectful, abusive, absent, or inconsistent. They were participated in chaotic and transient lifestyles. They had difficulty in establishing and maintaining stable relationships as an adult, and there was trauma in their childhood and or adulthood, often multiple, often traumatic events such as sexual assault, parent abandonment, or unexpected loss of a loved one. And I know what some of you may be thinking, and I thought the same thing. Many people experience these events in their lives and they don't become animal hoarders. So why, even with those experiences, it still isn't explained why some people translate that experience into the action of becoming an animal hoarder. Whoops. I want to go back one. Oh, treatment. Well, as you can imagine, since I mentioned there's very little known about it, treatment isn't well developed. Most of the people who are animal hoarders are reluctant to participate in therapy. And of course, that's not a good sign for successful therapy. And the most appropriate method for initial engagement of persons with animal hoarding disorder may be through community task forces composed of a mix of service professionals, housing, police, fire, public health, mental health, and legal. And then, as I say this, that may be the ideal, to have all these agencies working together on this particular case, but it's also in a time of reduced resources and more competition for those resources, it's probably difficult to get that kind of engagement. Multidisciplinary task forces can work together to engage offenders in identifying goals that matter to them while requiring compliance with non-hoarding behaviors. I'm messing up my own slideshow here. Okay. I guess one, and I'd be interested in hearing Jai talk about this, of critical importance is determining whether to limit the number of animals or require abstinence. In other words, sometimes you can negotiate with a hoarder, and probably they're one of those first two categories of hoarders, and allow them one or two animals, but with the promise, commitment that they will not increase that number. And then also, as part of the treatment, there has to be a lot of follow-up to look at the hoarder, animal hoarder, and what they're doing, and to provide basic social support that meets the need for bonding that was previously filled by the animals. As noted earlier, people with OCD are more aware of the behavior, and here they do not. I'm going to skip the metacognition because that's a little too, okay. What is the resolution of animal hoarding cases? Well, the first obviously is to remove animals from harm and to begin rehabilitation and placement. And again, that's where cost of care comes about. I have actually a question for prosecutors as I'm interrupting my own presentation. Animals have to be seized as evidence because they're considered property. However, unlike property, which if it's seized as evidence, it's not going to change. Whereas if an animal who has been abused or neglected in time will obviously heal somewhat. So like, how does that play a part in how to prosecute a case? Anyway, back to my presentation. You have to remove any people affected by the living conditions affected by the animal hoarding, and that might include removing an elder or removing children. Obviously address the physical and psychological needs of the hoarder, and to respond to environmental issues such as condemnation of or repair of the property, and institute provisions for monitoring and preventing a recurrence. There's a very high recidivism rate for hoarders. They sometimes will just go to another locality and continue hoarding again and keep on moving. And as you can kind of tell in general from the presentation that I made thus far, hoarding is a big problem. It affects many animals. It's a difficult issue to address. It requires a lot of resources. But it's worth paying attention to because of the amount of suffering that's involved with animals. I think I did it. I'm open for questions, although I assume they come in the chat room.
Hello, thank you for that. That was wonderful. I enjoyed a lot of the information that you brought us, and I would like to, if you could leave your camera and mic on for a few minutes, and Mr. Logsdon, if you wouldn't mind also turning your camera and mic on. We'd like to have a little short Q&A session with you two, and Dr. Randor, I think you actually have a question for Mr. Logsdon as well.
Yeah.
Mr. Logsdon, if you are with us, I have a question from Isabella Christensen. Mr. Logsdon, thank you for explaining the issues in prosecuting animal hoarders. I wonder, isn't there any allowance for fast tracking cases where the evidence is a live being, human or otherwise?
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of trouble hearing that. It may be my computer. The last part, is there something for fast tracking when you have a what?
Is there any allowance for fast tracking cases where the evidence is a live being, human or otherwise?
Well, the only fast tracking we have is when there's a defendant in jail who asks for a speedy trial. And so in that situation, it's 6 to 8 months, basically what the court says. Right now, there's no such thing. The motion for speedy trial has been put aside due to the emergencies. But other than that, there's really not. There's not a way to fast track it. We try to do our best on cases that need to be tried to try to reschedule and set them as soon as possible. But a lot of times the defendants' attorneys have tactics to delay. If they say, well, we're not ready to try the case, we don't have enough discovery, or we're waiting on this, they have different mechanisms they can use to extend the case out. And in general, in prosecution, that's a big defensive tactic, is to stretch it out. One, to kind of minimize, try to alter our motivation in the importance of a case. A case it seems more important to address the closer to the time of the action versus 2 years later. You're like, yeah, well, I've been dealing with this for 2 years. Yeah, it is a problem, but I feel like we just need to get it done. So really, the answer is unfortunately not.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know about that. And
yeah.
Dr. Randor, if you could repeat your question for Mr. Logsdon.
Yeah, I mean, when I was listening to you, animals are considered property, and the property has to be seized until there is some kind of trial. However, all other property that will not heal, will not change, will not die, or will not heal. So since the state of the animal will be so much different between the time that you took it into custody to the time the trial may come up, why is it necessary to hold them?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's not necessary to hold them. Like, that's a good question. Part of it is, we could photograph the animals, and the photographs would be enough proof to present at trial to get a conviction. However, like if we were to seize property, the only place that it would go to is back to the owner. If they're the owners of these animals, the only place it could possibly go back to is them, because they still have rights under their property rights to that until they either forfeit it, which is why we're kind of doing the wrangling that we're doing, or until we have a conviction and we have a hearing before the judge to declare that it's been forfeited to the state, so we can just go ahead and move it on.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Randor or Mr. Logsdon? Joy actually has a question for you, Dr. Randor. She wants to know if there is successful treatment for hoarders to successfully be back into society.
No. Sorry, there isn't. I think I missed a slide, and that is, previously people thought hoarders, animal hoarders would be a part of OCD, but that no longer is the case. The latest operating theory is that hoarders suffer from attachment disorder. And so that means that the treatment would have to focus on that. But regrettably, not much is known. Also, I did see another question in the chat room about
Thank you.
someone asking about, isn't it, I guess, negative to call a rescuer a classification of hoarder? I think it's overwhelmed rescuer, not just any rescuer, because so it's when a rescuer is kind of lost control, overwhelmed.
Thank you for that answer. All right. Thank you so much for that presentation. We are
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you with us today. And with your list of accomplishments, I feel honored that you were able to join us.
Well, I feel honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Lieutenant Jai Hamilton, Senior Advisor, Fayette County Animal Control. Jai has a bachelor's degree in psychology and started working as an animal control officer in Lexington shortly after graduating. She is certified as a livestock investigator through the Kentucky Horse Council, as well as being a certified humane investigator through the National Animal Cruelty Investigation School. Each year, she teaches classes on animal neglect and abuse to animal advocates as well as police recruits. With 12 years of experience as an ACO, she currently serves as the animal cruelty investigator for Fayette County. She was the first ACO in her county to apply for and execute search warrants for animals and has worked hundreds of animal abuse cases that have resulted in convictions. In her time off, she enjoys training dogs in obedience, bite work, and detection. She's a friend to the animals, but also a hero to them. This is Jai's second time speaking at a Kentucky Animal Action event, and we invited her back for a second time because we think she's great.
Well, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. So I'm going to talk about some challenges in hoarding investigations, and then also talk about a particular case that we had back in 2018, where we had 135 cats seized from one house. So to start this off, I'm going to talk about something called voluntary compliance. And as an animal control officer, I rely heavily on this. So I will get a complaint. I will go to the house. I'll explain who I am, the nature of the complaint, and I will ask to see their animals. And most people have absolutely no problem showing me their animals. But when we talk about hoarders, it's a whole nother ballgame. So a lot of times people just won't answer their door. And when I say people, I mean hoarders. If they do answer the door, they won't let anyone in. They won't respond to tags left on their door. They won't call you back when you call them. So they're really just fine the way that they're living, and they hope that we just go away so that they continue living in peace. A lot of times when I hit something like this, it's kind of a roadblock for me. So a lot of times it's, a dead end and I can't move forward. What I want to talk about next is the picture on the right. And that is a particular case that I had where somebody had called me and said that they had a thin dog with some skin issues. I had been out to the house trying to make contact with these people 5 or 6 times. They never answered the door. They never responded to the tags. And I never saw the dog ever, didn't even hear a dog inside. So for me, I can't do anything with that. Shortly after, I think my 5th or 6th time, the complainant called me and said, hey, the dog was just out. I was able to snap a picture. I said, can you email it to me? Did you take it this morning? And he said, yes. And so I was able to use that picture to obtain a search warrant and get that dog out of that house. So when I talk about complainants, it is, although you can make an anonymous complaint, and I will certainly check out that complaint, but you leaving your information and you willing to go to trial can really make or break a case. I've had cases that prosecutors didn't want to move forward with because they said, unless your witness is going to talk about what they saw, it's not going to play out well in trial. So we can get search warrants, but we need to have probable cause that a crime was committed by a particular person at a specific place. So just somebody saying that the animals are in bad shape isn't enough. We have to do an independent investigation on our own. So in the Kelly cat hoarding case, we had somebody who called us and said that there was some sort of a medical emergency. They never would let anyone in the house ever, but something was going on where they had to call EMS. So the neighbor had briefly went inside of their house and said, oh my gosh, it was absolutely horrible. The smell was overwhelming. There were cats everywhere. They didn't look good. So we had, and I will go to trial for you guys. So we're like, okay. So we take that complaint and we run our independent investigation. Our investigator goes out there. He says that he gets out of his vehicle from the street and says that he can smell an odor emanating from that house. He walks up to the door. He knocks on the door. The person there that does not answer the door, they actually go upstairs, open an upstairs window. He says that he can see cats in that window, but from what he can tell, they look like normal cats. There's nothing really wrong. But she's at the top of the window. He says, can I see the animals? This is the complaint we got. And she essentially says, F off. So we have history there. So the backstory, we actually were out there years prior and we did a surrender on 65 cats. And I think at the time they said they had about 100. So, we have the history. Our ordinance luckily includes smell as being a violation of the care and treatment ordinance, which just falls under cruelty. So we had the history, the smell, we had the complainant willing to go to trial. So with that, we got a search warrant. And I will say that in my experience, hoarders just do not have lights and it's completely dark in there. So the day when that door came down, it was around noon. It was light outside. It was dark inside of the house, and there was a stairwell that went upstairs. So when that door came out, there was a collective pause where we all said, whoa, it seemed like 1,000 eyeballs staring right at us, knocky down odor coming from this house. So these are some pictures from that particular hoarding case. I will say that every surface contained hair, dirt, grime, feces. The cats, there were all sorts of issues with these cats. We had cats that were wheezing. We had cats sneezing. We had cats with obvious upper respiratory issues going on. There were cats without eyes. Later, we found out a lot of the cats didn't have eyelids. They were thin, some were pregnant, diarrhea everywhere. I mean, absolutely disgusting. The top picture that you're seeing is actually one of the back bedroom where they slept. And you'd think that's carpet, but it's actually not. It's actually packed down feces. And I will say that the bed looked very similar to that, and that's where they were sleeping. The bottom picture is kind of general. That's just the kitchen. I will say that the person that lived there told me that he cleans 3 times a day, and I maybe believe that because the floors, the hard surface floors were cleaner than the carpet. But with 135 cats, how clean is your house really going to be? You can see the diarrhea splatter that goes all the way to the ceiling, and that first picture there is the kitchen. The bottom picture, there was a group of kittens that were sitting there. This kitten can't even see. I remember I picked up one and I thought it was dead. It was still breathing, but it was cold to the touch. And then the third picture, you can see how horrible, how miserable these cats are living in just an absolute filth. So the next slide is, we did evaluations on every single cat that day. We were putting in maybe 12-hour days for 3 or 4 days in a row. It was a very, very overwhelming experience, but you can kind of see the different ailments going on. We have cats with diarrhea, we have cats with severe eye issues, upper respiratory. These are some pictures from our vet. So these people actually weren't going out and acquiring a bunch of cats. What they did is they had cats, but then they started breeding, and then they started inbreeding. So a lot of the problems, well, yeah, a lot of the problems had to do with issues like genetic issues. So most of the cats had eye problems. A lot of the cats had to have their eyes removed. Some of the cats were blind. We had cats that had to have dental extractions, full mouth dental extractions. It was so bad. And again, that's from genetic issues. And then these cats had upper respiratories. They had the feline strain of herpes and chlamydia. I mean, absolutely awful. Our vet euthanized 6 right off the bat because she said it wasn't humane to even try to save some of these cats and kittens. So how can you help? You can contact your shelter to see their specific needs. I know we're a pretty big shelter, so we have a lot of resources. But what would have been really helpful if we had people step forward willing to foster some of these animals until the court case. I know that even though we have a lot of carriers that no one really expects, we had no idea how many cats we were going to get that day, and getting 135 carriers together was a bit of a struggle. So, you can call, what do you guys need? Send your workers some, snacks, some waters, Gatorade, anything really helps us. And the next thing is about supporting our animal welfare laws. We have the Cost of Care, the House Bill 100, and that's really going to help our Kentucky animals. So just to put this into perspective, this particular case took over a year to get a resolution in court. And we're lucky that we had 2 owners. One owner surrendered 108 a couple days into the seizure, but we had the other owner who absolutely refused to surrender their animals. So that meant that we had to keep 27 cats at our shelter for over a year. That's so much space and resources that are being devoted to animals that are just sitting in kennels. And let alone, I mean, these are victimized animals that I'm sure would love to live in a normal environment for once. And they have to sit there while the court, there's, got this backup legal limbo going on. So 27 cats for a year, we totaled up just boarding. So I'm not including the dental extractions or veterinary costs. I'm strictly including $10 a day per boarding per cat we had in our custody. And it totaled over $80,000. So that's coming out of animal control money and ultimately taxpayer money. So we need to change, we need to get a law in place where we're putting those costs back onto the abuser. And if they can't pay for the cost to care for their own animals, then they get surrendered so we can adopt them out. So in this particular case that I'm talking about, we reached a plea deal, and I will talk about that here in a minute. But something that you guys need to be aware of is that these types of crimes are all misdemeanors. And really all neglect in Kentucky are misdemeanors. So what that means is every charge would be up to a year in jail and up to a $500 fine per charge. Now, with that said, I want to talk about the realities of what's going to happen if we were going to go to trial. So to put this into perspective, I had a really, really horrible horse case that happened with someone who had previously been convicted of horse neglect. But in this particular case, she had 4 starving horses. One was down on its side for days. She was bringing it food and water. It was paralyzed on the back end. Its leg was twitching in pain. It would beg for someone to come help it. It had bed sores all over its body. She was flipping it back and forth. The horse should have been euthanized days ago or should have been sent to an emergency equine clinic, but she was just letting it suffer out in this field. Horrendous. I have great video of it. When she presented in trial, she got up on the stand and she cried and said, you know, oh, I was just doing the best I could with, you know, everything I had. I was doing the best I know how. And, you know, I think people took pity on her. And when it came down to it, we only got 30 days in jail. Now, the county attorney's office thought that was absolutely wonderful. Did you hear we got 30 days in jail for an animal crime? Well, I'm glad we got it guilty. But at the same time, I mean, in my perspective, she should not be allowed to own animals. Those animals shouldn't go back to her. You know, she should spend a lot more time in jail, up to 4 years. So I know there's a lot of hesitation when we talk about taking animal cases to trial. And in hoarding cases in particular, plea deals, although we're willing to take it to trial, we're always going to push for a plea deal in a hoarding situation because it could be more beneficial in the long run. So the resolution that was agreed upon for this particular, the Kelly cat case, they would plead guilty to all charges. We got continued monitoring for a year, mental health counseling for a year, and in exchange for that, we had to give them 6 cats back, but they did have to be spayed and neutered at the owner's expense. So, I mean, it's an okay deal. I wish it would have been a lot better, but it is what it is. This picture here, this is Muppet. This is one of the kittens that did get adopted from the Kelly case. And you can see that this kitten has turned out to be beautiful and healthy. But I do want to say that there are some long-term effects to the animals when we're talking about hoarding situations. So our vet said that 30% of these cats that came from the house would need ongoing long-term care for the rest of their life. So, you know, when people come to adopt an animal from the animal shelter, they aren't thinking I'm going to have to spend thousands of dollars with long-term care. But ultimately, that's what was happening. So we were getting, even though we adopted most of these cats out, we were getting them returned several times. Some of the cats we had returned 3 times. And it was for, you know, medical costs. And then the other thing was behavioral. So we had one cat that somebody said, even though I fed my cat, you know, what it needed for that day, the cat would always act like it was starving and would be completely obsessed with food and won't leave me alone. And then we had other cats that never knew what a litter box was, never knew what a clean environment was. So that's some long-term effects on these cats. There's a little comic for you, and that's all I have for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Jai. That was a wonderful presentation. However, it's very sad and eye-opening. It's hard to see those images. I'm sure a lot of people have trouble with that, but we're firm believers that awareness is key. And if you don't know about stuff like that, how can you let your legislators know that it's important to you? So thank you for presenting that to us. We actually have a couple questions for you. Someone asked, what info is helpful to get from the public in regard to cruelty, like videos, photos, that kind of thing?
Yeah, anything that you can provide me. So I think the biggest thing would be your name, your information, and your willingness to take something to trial. If you're gonna feel so strongly where you need to report it, then feel strongly enough to follow through with that. And video helps me so much because a lot of times I may never see that animal, but if you're providing me with video, and that might be something where I can take it to the next level.
Thank you for that. Can you also comment on neighbors who might be afraid to report their neighbor? They see something, they know it's wrong, but they're afraid to report their neighbor. Can you talk about what your advice is for those people?
Report it anyway. So most of my cases, in 12 years, I have only been to jury trial 3 times. So to put that into perspective for you, most of our cases aren't going to make it to jury trial. So I would never, and it's our policy, and most animal control's policy, we'll get your information for our records, and in case I need to call you back for more information. But I would never tell someone your information. I never say, well, your neighbor said this, because I want you to freely give me that information. So it is confidential until it gets to the point where we may need to take it to trial, which is super rare.
Well, and that's good for people to hear, because so many times people think, oh, they're gonna, retaliate against me or something like that. And I would say in most cases, there's probably more than one person that sees a situation. So they're not really going to know who reported. And if you keep their information confidential, unless it goes to trial, I mean, there shouldn't be any real dangers in reporting, from what I understand. Of course, this isn't legal advice, but I'm just saying people need to realize it's okay to report things. And in my case, if I see something like a dog that's out in freezing weather, I'm going to have more trouble with my conscience if that dog freezes to death than if I report it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jai. That was a fantastic presentation, and you clearly are in the trenches. You have seen a lot of things that I can't even imagine. I've worked a couple hoarding cases, and I don't think I've even scratched the surface of what you've experienced. And I know that's hard on any human being. Thank you so much for doing that. And you're a true hero for the animals. And thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we got another question about Kentucky addressing cockfighting. So I would like to say that Representative Gravis did introduce a bill on this a while back, but that bill was stalled, and then now that he's not in office anymore, that bill is now non-existent. So it would be good if we could get some more legislation passed for cockfighting. Cockfighting is a very dangerous event. There's a lot of crime and things that go along with it. So it's legislation for that is very needed. There's also getting ready to be a bill introduced, and Joy may be able to speak more about this, but there's going to be a bill introduced about training for law enforcement. One of the problems with charging, prosecuting, pursuing any kind of animal welfare case is the lack of training and knowledge that a lot of law enforcement have or don't have. And it's not their fault. There just currently really isn't training in place for them or animal control. And, a lot of times they just really just don't know what to do, or there isn't legislation with teeth to charge them with. So there is some training legislation that's going to be introduced soon. We don't have a bill number on that yet because it hasn't been introduced, but when it comes out, it'll be a great thing to support. Training law enforcement and animal control will help with pursuing animal welfare in Kentucky. All right. Also, I'd like to point out that the Humane Society of the United States recently did a presentation on cockfighting. I believe they have a local Facebook page, HSUS Kentucky. I'm not sure, but I know their presentation was listed up there, and they talked a lot about cockfighting and how you can help with that. So please look into that. And let's see, I think we have another poll ready for you guys. If we could share that poll. I'd like to get some of your input. And I apologize for people who are on Facebook Live. Apparently you cannot see this poll. I apologize for that. We have a limit how many people we can have in the Zoom webinar, but I will read the poll so that you know what's going on with it. What is your experience with animal advocacy in Kentucky? I've met with my legislators in Frankfort or in my district. I have emailed my legislators to advocate for better animal welfare laws in Kentucky. I have called the Legislative Research Commission to ask my legislator to support or oppose a bill. I have not engaged in animal advocacy in Kentucky, but I am excited to get to work, or all of the above. And as soon as everybody's done answering, I'll let you know how that poll turns out. All right, the poll results are in. What is your experience with animal advocacy in Kentucky? 23% of people answered, I have met with my legislators in Frankfort or in my district. 12% have answered, I have emailed my legislators to advocate for better animal welfare laws in Kentucky. 23% said, I have called the Legislative Research Commission to ask my legislator to support or oppose a bill. 23% said, I have not engaged in animal advocacy in Kentucky, but I am excited to get to work. Oh, that's exciting. Keep in touch with us, please. And 19% said all of the above. All right. Next up, we have Hannah Truxell. Hannah is an attorney in Louisville, working in nonprofit and animal welfare arenas, and a member of the Kentucky Animal Action Board. An animal advocate and activist who cares deeply about animals, she is in-house counsel for the Humane League, an international nonprofit dedicated to ending the abuse of animals raised for food. She has previously worked with the Animal Welfare Institute and Farm Sanctuary. She is vice chair of the animal law section of the Kentucky Bar Association, and she lives with a growing family of rescue of dogs and cats and is married to Deb, who is a pastor in Michigan. Hannah is a phenomenal board member for Kentucky Animal Action, and I am so glad to have her on our team because she pulls these most amazing ideas out of the blue that I never would have thought of, and she really gives us fuel to move forward for the animals. Hannah, take it away.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I'm so glad to be part of Kentucky Animal Action and so glad to be part of this event today. I'm going to be talking with you all about legislative advocacy. And as I was listening to Jai speak, I thought this is going to be a really hard switch to go from the very difficult stories that Jai shared and the information that Dr. Randor shared. And I don't know about you, but so often when I hear these stories and this information, I feel hopeless. I feel like, you know, what can I do? How can I be involved? How can I change this? Because the need for change here is just so strong. And my hope is that in talking with you all today about legislative advocacy, that you all will feel empowered. You all won't feel such a sense of despair, and that you'll leave with the tools to go out and make change in Kentucky and in your local areas. So you'll see on the bottom right there, that's Bert. Bert is now thriving, of course, in our home, but he was a victim of the horrible animal welfare laws here in Kentucky. And I know we all probably have animals in our homes like Bert that have, you know, a bad past, but a good present. And for me, you know, he and other animals are the reason to keep pushing forward. So let's talk about legislative advocacy. At its core, legislative advocacy is working with the legislative branch to influence legislation. And that's either in a positive way, such as supporting legislation, or in a way that encourages legislators not to adopt legislation. The most common form of legislative advocacy is through direct lobbying, and that's meeting with your legislator, emailing your legislator, writing your legislator. So why does legislative advocacy matter? Michelle talked about this early on this morning, and the most important thing to keep in mind about legislative advocacy is that your voice matters. It may feel like it doesn't sometimes, but it really does. Even if you didn't vote for your legislator, you're still their constituent, and they need to hear from you. One of the things that we see very often, and you've probably experienced it as well, is that legislators are very attuned to the political process. They're attuned to the legislative process. They're attuned to working with their colleagues in the legislature. They're not so attuned to what's happening in their district. And legislators don't know what they don't know. So unless they hear from you about things that matter, they're not necessarily going to know that something's a particular issue. The last piece, and this is going to sound really corny, but it's true, legislators work for you. Even if you did not vote for them, they work for you, right? And you vote, you're a constituent, and they need to listen to what your concerns are. They go there to represent you, and they need to hear you out. So the first step in legislative advocacy is to figure out who your legislators are. If you already know, excellent. If not, it's very easy to find out who your legislators are. So the first step is to go to legislature.ky.gov. And we've got a little graphic here that you can see. If you mouse over to legislators, a drop down will come up, and then you click on who's my legislator. And then from there, it'll open up a window where you input your address. And once you input your address, it will bring up who your representative is in the state of Kentucky and who your senator is in the state of Kentucky. Please note that this does not include your federal legislators. So, how do I engage in legislative advocacy? The first step is to identify your legislator. The second step, and then really the third bullet here about contacting your legislators, they're kind of one and the same. So the first step really is to work on building a relationship. And as Michelle said, the most productive thing you can do is have a healthy and good relationship with your legislator. So you're probably asking, how do I do that? So the first way is to meet with them. And as Michelle said, typically outside of COVID, we'd recommend asking for coffee or meeting with them in Frankfurt, that sort of thing. But because of COVID, you can't really meet in person. But the good news is that legislators are meeting with constituents via Zoom. They are well versed in this, and we met with, I think, 3 of them last week. So talk with the legislative assistant and ask for a Zoom meeting, and you'll get 15 or 30 minutes. In post-COVID times, you'll want to attend their events. So it's pretty common to have legislators host coffee hours or host town halls at the library, that sort of thing. You should attend those events, introduce yourself, talk about your issues, talk about what matters to you. If you are involved with a rescue or a shelter and you hold events, invite them to your events so they can come and hear from your volunteers. They can hear about what you're into and what matters to you all. The next way is to engage with them on social media. So follow them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, on Instagram, all those platforms. You don't have to do all of them. I very rarely use Twitter, but engage with them, like their posts, comment on their posts, that sort of thing. And then finally, it's really important to know your legislator before you need them. So I know animal advocates in Kentucky are really incredible when it comes to calling the Legislative Research Commission, emailing around bills, that sort of thing during the legislative session. And the thing I would encourage you to do is build that relationship outside of the session. So in April, find a time to meet with them, or even in November, that sort of thing. So then they know you and you know them, and they know your name when you leave a message or when you email, and you all have built a relationship. So along those lines, you'll want to contact them regularly. So you can email them using the form on the legislature.ky.gov, or a little hack is first name.last name@lrc.ky.gov. That's legislator's email address. And then the other way is just to write them handwritten notes. That gets their attention in a way that an email or a phone call doesn't always get their attention. So continuing with, what does legislative advocacy look like? These particular tips that I've laid out here apply to in person and in writing. So you always want to know the issue. And this goes back to what Michelle said about educating yourself. You should present facts and accurate information when you reach out to them. Don't make things up. Don't exaggerate. I always tell people there's really no need to exaggerate the situation, because it's bad enough here in Kentucky. You can just use real stories and it will get people's attention. Make it personal. So talk to your legislator about why this matters to you and why it should matter to the legislator. And then finally, make sure you're prepared and informed. And you'll want to ensure that you're able to answer questions. If you can't answer questions, it's not a big deal. Just tell them that you'll follow up, which gives you an opportunity to follow up, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, the next tip is to know exactly who you're talking to. And this can feel a little bit weird, but it's important. So you need to know their party affiliation. You need to know the committees they're on. You need to know their seniority. And I'd also recommend that you know their caucuses. So in terms of seniority, you'll want to know, are they a junior legislator, or are they a leader in the Senate majority party? Where do they fall? Where are they on the power grid, right? Where can they make influence on legislation? You'll want to know their track record. So are they animal friendly, or are they not animal friendly? Have they sponsored bills in the past? You'll want to know, going into that, are they going to be open to what you're saying, or is this going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle? And then the last thing is to know what their background is. So you'll want to do some research just to know, who am I talking to? Do they have rescue dogs? What high school do they go to? These are things that allow you to make the conversation personal and allow you to build a repertoire from the beginning, so that you are on the same page and you have things, to compare on. And it's a sense of bonding, quite honestly. So continuing on with this, in both writing and in person, you'll want to ensure that you are concise, focused, and priority driven. And by concise, I mean, if you have a meeting via Zoom or in person, you're going to get 15 or 30 minutes. You don't have time to talk about every single animal welfare issue that you care about, because you just won't get anywhere. And on top of that, they'll quit listening. So you'll want to go in there focused on one particular issue. So for example, right now, we're encouraging you all to hit hard House Bill 100. You'll want to be focused on House Bill 100. There are other times to talk about all of the other wonderful animal welfare bills that have been filed, but that particular meeting is not the one. So you'll want to focus on it, and you'll want to focus on the priority. So you're there to talk about that bill, and that's all you want to talk about. When you reach out to legislators and ask them to support things, you want to ensure that you're making very specific asks. So don't reach out to your legislator and say, the state of animal welfare is terrible here in Kentucky, and I hate it, and you should hate it too, and I want you to do something. And they'll write back and say, yes, it's horrible, I hate it, and thanks for writing. And then you'll never hear anything else. So when you reach out to them, be very specific. So you either want them to sponsor legislation, you want them to co-sponsor legislation. So for example, you should all be writing your representatives in the House and asking them to co-sponsor House Bill 100. In some instances, you're going to be asking them to support or oppose legislation if it's already moved from a committee onto the House or Senate floor. Another key thing is to follow up. So this goes back to building that relationship. So after a meeting, you'll want to write them, thank them for their time, talk about what you discussed, and hit exactly what you asked them to do. And if they agreed to something, remind them of what they agreed to. So long term, always ask for definite answers on things. Again, back to the point about how they'll say, yes, animal welfare is horrible, but there's nothing I can do, or yeah, I agree. You want to ask for very definitive things. And then the other piece is after a legislator has voted, and if they voted in such a way that you agree with, or even a way that you didn't agree with, you need to write them. So if they voted in favor of a piece of legislation that you asked them to support, thank them. If they voted against it, very politely voice your disappointment with that. And then finally, on writing, make sure that you write personal letters. It's really easy to copy and paste from a form or to use online petitions, but legislators are always more open to personal letters. If you're meeting in person or virtually, bring materials with you. Kentucky Animal Action has a one-page handout that was provided by Representative Stevenson that talks about why House Bill 100 is important. So provide that to your legislator, and then bring friends with you. So bring constituents. I think it takes something like 6 people in a room, or even 6 letters of support or calls to get a legislator's attention. 6 people. So you can bring constituents, you can bring neighbors, bring friends. Those people don't even have to say anything. Their presence is enough to make an impact on this legislator. So usually during Kentucky Animal Action Day, we schedule meetings with legislators, and you all get the opportunity to meet one-on-one. And because of COVID, that wasn't possible. But we've created what we hope will take the place of that, and that's Kentucky Animal Action Week. And that starts tomorrow and runs through February 13th. And each day will include an action that you can take for Kentucky animals. And then on the 13th, we'll conclude with a Zoom call for anyone who wants to join in to talk about the actions, to talk about your meetings with your legislators, and give you an opportunity to network. So tomorrow we'll get an action up, and the action includes various things, including calling to make an appointment with your legislator so you can meet with them via Zoom next week. So we'll drop in the Q&A the link to the Facebook event so that you all can RSVP there and watch daily for updates. And then finally, I just want to talk quickly about resources. As mentioned, there's the public Google Drive that has handouts in there. Absolutely look at that. It's got all kinds of good stuff, including how a bill becomes a law, and then a legislative advocacy 101 handout. It also has a voter registration form. If you've not registered to vote, absolutely register to vote. Keep that registration up to date, because legislators are always more willing to move when they know that you vote, and you will use that as a form of advocacy. Follow the Legislative Research Commission through legislature.ky.gov. There you can find your legislator. You can find contact information for your legislator, as we discussed, and you can also track bills. And then pay attention to various animal groups in Kentucky. All of these groups listed here do a great job of posting action alerts and posting commentary on bills. And it's a really great way to see where things are progressing and figure out how you can get involved. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your time. And I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. That was all super great advice. And I have a feeling people are going to have questions for you. They're not popping up yet, but I have a feeling. I would like to say Hannah is spearheading Animal Action Week, which was a phenomenal idea. And we're super excited about that. We were a little bummed that the event had to be virtual this year, but we're going to try to make up for it with some other efforts. And Animal Action Week is one of those efforts. So with that said, I think I think we have one more poll, and then Senator Julie Rocky Adams is going to be joining us. So if we could go ahead and pop that poll up, and then I will get that link, Senator Adams on board with us. For those on Facebook Live, I know that you guys can't see the polls, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll also read the results so you can know what we're seeing on the Zoom side of things. This poll is, have you ever met with your legislators? And it's a simple answer, just yes or no. We will come back to the answers on that poll about meeting with your legislators. But first, I would like to introduce Senator Julie Rocky Adams. She is the Majority Caucus Chair in the Senate. She's the only woman in Senate leadership. She's a fantastic role model for women and children and everyone. She's a friend to the animals, and she's actually my personal legislator. And I just am so happy to have her on today. Senator Adams, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I always do exactly what you tell me to do. So I'm glad to have you in the district. And also, I just want you to know, I apologize for being so late. As you know, it's kind of fast and furious. Everybody's, going wild in Frankfurt right now. I just stepped out of committee. We're voting on historical horse racing today. And then I have 2 bills up in 2 other committees. So it's kind of crazy, but I do appreciate the opportunity to say hello and to meet with your advocates today, because if there's one area of public policy that we all know needs to have greater emphasis, it is animal welfare. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate because I believe that the way that you treat your animals is the way that you treat humans. And so we have to make sure that we're not cruel. We have to make sure that we're kind, and we have to make sure that we take care of our furry friends, because they are such an important part of our community, of our mental health, and our just our overall well-being. So that when I say I do whatever Michelle wants me to do, I honestly really try. She's such an expert, and I really try and listen to everything that she knows and understands about animal welfare. And with that, she knows that I'm always a huge advocate. Sometimes things are easier to get past than others, but like I always tell my kids, we have to think big, but act practically. And so I think, as far as a charge for all of the advocates on the call today, let's always continue to think big, and we'll just act practically, and we'll try to see what we can get. But we have to keep the pressure on, and we have to keep moving forward, because it's important. It's important for our community and how we treat and conduct ourselves with regard to animal welfare. And so with that, I'm really excited. Anything I can do, let me know. Call me, text me, email me. I can give you my contact if you need it. But unless you have anything else for me to talk about.
Senator, thank you for taking the time out to join us today. I know it's been super crazy. This whole session is crazy. It's a short session anyway, and now everybody's virtual, which makes it double hard. And I know you introduced a bill this morning in committee. Thank you for all of your hard work and taking the time out to come meet with us. And what she says is true. She has to be one of the easiest people to work with in Frankfurt that I've ever met with. And I'm so lucky to have her as my senator. And thank you for taking the time out to meet with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon in the future.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thank you so much. All right. I do not know if we are able to see the results to that poll about have you met with your legislators? There it is. Hats off to Liz from Making a Difference Now. She has helped us with the technical side of things, and I'm really not quite sure we could have accomplished this today without her. She's been amazing. Thank you, Liz. So for those on Facebook Live that cannot see the poll, have you ever met with your legislators? 58% of people on the call today said yes, they have. 42% said no, they have not. So we know that we've given you all kinds of tools and tips and everything. For those that weren't on when we first started, we've all kind of touched on this, but the number one most important thing you can do as an animal lover, an advocate, someone who cares about your community is to cultivate healthy relationships with your legislators. They represent you, but you have to let them represent you. So they need to know what's important to you. If animal welfare is important to you, let them know. And they are human, just like us. Don't be intimidated. It's okay. Just reach out to them. You usually have to reach out to their legislative assistant first. But when you actually do end up talking to them, just know that they're human and that they usually are willing to hear what you have to say as their constituent, and just have conversations with them. And over time, you'll build a relationship, and it will be well worth your while, well worth it for the animals and anything else that you care about.
I just wanted to add, Michelle, I've been doing double duty monitoring the comment section on the Facebook Live. And Lisa commented that she has asked for meetings with her legislators, and the response she gets is that they're not available. And we've heard that before, particularly on Kentucky Animal Action Days in the past. And what I would say to that is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I would encourage you to keep trying. Don't give up. It can feel very defeating, and you can feel very deflated. But I would encourage you to respond to that by asking, well, when are they available? Because if not this week, if not next week, they're going to be available at some point, and you want to be on their calendar. So don't give up. Keep asking for appointments. And if you don't get anywhere, keep calling, keep writing. But Kentucky animals need you. And, we can't give up. And legislators, I think sometimes hope that you'll just go away. And if you stay a thorn in their side, they're going to have to listen eventually at some point.
And not all legislators, but some, there are issues that are important to each one. And for some, animal welfare may not be highest on their list. And but if they hear from enough of their constituents that it is important to people who vote, they'll bump it up. They'll bump it up, but they have to hear from you first. And the education and awareness plays a big part in that, because you have to educate yourself, but you have to educate other constituents who are your friends and neighbors that also vote for that legislator. And you heard Hannah say something about a group of 6 really makes a mark. And that is true. A federal legislator that I met with in DC once told me that it only takes 10 to 15 calls to put an issue on their radar. That's federal. 10 to 15 calls to one legislator is all it takes to put an issue on a federal legislator's radar. So what does that mean for state legislators? Probably that it takes even less than that. And that just points out that your voice really does matter. If it only takes that few of calls, then every single call makes a difference. So, and I'd also like to add that when we put out action alerts to make a call to the LRC, there'll be an 800 number. Usually those calls take 60 to 90 seconds total. We'll have a very short ask about support this bill, ask for this, vote yes, vote no, that kind of thing. And the people that answer are super easy to talk to. It's not actually the legislators when you call when we give you an action item to partake in. It's not the legislators that you're calling on that 800 number. It's what's called the LRC, the Legislative Research Commission, and they are there just to take messages about your specific asks and requests and concerns to your legislators. And they will tally those, and then the legislators literally pick up stacks of, I think the green ones are yeses and the red ones are no's, and they have green ones for this bill and red ones for this bill. And so it makes a difference. And if they come in and they see this huge stack for this animal welfare bill, it's going to make a difference to them. And I think Sherilyn Stevenson may be on here if she would like to elaborate further about what happens when they get a stack of yes and no from the call center. I don't think she may not be on anymore. But anyway, we would like to open it up for Q&A. We have a little bit of time left. Let's open it up to Q&A. What kind of questions do you guys have for us? All right, we do have some questions coming in, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section. All right, let's talk about Kentucky animal legislation introduced in 2021. We're about to go over bills, but first, I added this slide last minute when I heard how cold it was going to get today and excruciatingly cold for the next few days. Extreme weather is something that haunts me because I've seen the suffering that it can cause. Every time it gets really hot or cold, I worry about animals even more than I usually worry about them. A couple of years ago, we had 11 reported cases of dogs dying by freezing to death just in Kentucky. 1 week, 11 reported dogs freezing to death just in Kentucky. All of them were preventable. This is going to get a little bit deep, but I feel like people need to hear this to understand the kind of things that happen because we don't have protections against this. One dog in particular was a senior dog. The neighbors reported that the dog was crying and crying. When the ACO arrived, the dog was still alive, but the poor thing was stuck to the pavement. When they picked up the dog, part of its skin was still attached to the pavement. Because there are no protections in place about this, there was no procedure lined out for the ACO or others involved to follow. The ACO seized the dog from the owners and took him to the shelter in hopes that the next day they could better handle the situation when everything was open. The dog died that night alone in the shelter from his injuries from freezing and hypothermia. It should have never happened. I'd like to say all of this was preventable and that we need extreme legislation, and this goes for hot days too. I'd also like to say that there wasn't a court case that was resolved in court for that. And I was not on the scene, but it's pretty well known what happened to that dog. If you see something, say something. I always post on Facebook when it's going to get really cold. Bring your pets in, tell your neighbor. The good old days of don't report your neighbor are over. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Do the right thing, report it. You think you can't live with a neighbor being mad at you, but what about the dog freezing to death being on your conscience if you didn't report it? If you're not sure who to call 911 and they can direct you to the right channels. All right. Legislation for 2021. For those who are new to legislation, this is how bills work. There's HB and SB. That's because bills are presented in the House or in the Senate. HB stands for House bills, SB stands for Senate bills. Also, please note that bill numbers change every single year. If a bill doesn't pass this year and they reintroduce it next year, it will have a totally different bill number. So please, we were supporting an SB 21 in the past, and that's not the bill number anymore. So just keep that in mind. All right, there are 3 hot car bills and 2 cost of care bills this year. Hot car bills are HB 99, HB 215, SB 33. Cost of care bills are HB 100 and HB 215. HB 215 is a combo bill of hot cars and cost of care. House Bill 26, HB 26. This is a comprehensive bill that would protect companion animals and human victims in domestic violence situation. This is also a link bill acknowledging the connection between human and animal violence. This is a coercive bill where someone in an abuse situation can threaten an animal to force the human to do what they want to do. And we would like to get protections against this. This bill is filed by Representative Walker Thomas. It's a good bill to support. It not only protects animals, it also protects humans. We recommend supporting HB 26. HB 57. This is a comprehensive bill that would broaden the definition of torture and increase the penalty for torture to Class D felony. It's currently a Class A misdemeanor, which each subsequent offense being a Class D felony. There's many loopholes in the current Kentucky statute for the definition of torture. This would close many of those loopholes. It's a really good bill to support. HB 57. It was filed by Representative Chris Freeland. HB 99, hot car, filed by Representative Sherilyn Stevenson. I'd like to say Sherilyn Stevenson is a huge friend to the animal. She's an animal lover, but she is always willing to introduce animal welfare legislation. So it's always a pleasure to have her join us. She's going to be on the event later with the rally, but also she has filed a couple bills this year, and thank you for doing that, Representative Stevenson. This hot car bill is a pretty good start, and we need a hot car bill. There are hundreds of calls every single year about animals and hot cars, and because there's nothing in place, people aren't sure what to do. Even the law enforcement aren't sure, how to handle it sometimes. So this is something that's very needed. This bill appears to need a little bit more language amended to it to provide for civil immunity. And we really need extreme weather legislation in Kentucky. So letting your legislators know that you want a hot car bill or any kind of extreme weather legislation is a good idea. All right, HB 100, cost of care and forfeiture. This is also by Representative Sherilyn Stevenson. This is badly needed. Cost of care is our priority legislation for the 2021 legislative session, and it's also the theme of our event this year. So this legislation is super important to us, and we really want to see something passed. And we are hoping This is her bill in the House, and there is a second bill in the House as well for cost of care. But we're also hoping to see something on the Senate side to match similar language, and maybe we'll have a chance of getting that passed if something is presented on both sides. This bill will need to be amended to include the post-seizure birth protection for litters born after the animals are seized. It's a good idea to let your legislators know that you support HB 100. HB 215, Hot Cars, Cost of Care and Forfeiture. This is by Jason Nemes. This is the combo bill for cost of care and hot car. This bill is actually pretty impressive with all that it covers in one bill. It covers hot cars, cost of care and forfeiture, and it also broadens the reach of animal abuse laws in general. This bill has good language as introduced, and it would really help Kentucky animals. However, much like HB 100, this bill would need to be amended to include post-seizure birth protections to protect litters born after animals are seized from abuse or cruelty. We recommend supporting this bill as well, but just be sure and let your legislators know that you would like to see post-seizure birth protections included. SB 33 is also a hot car bill. It's the third one, and Senator Danny Carroll filed this bill. I would like to thank Danny Carroll for his efforts on continuously trying to get a hot car bill passed. I believe this is the third time he's introduced a hot car bill. He did one in 2018, 2019, and he's doing it again this year. Thank you, Senator Carroll, for trying to get a hot car bill passed. We really need it. And for those that don't know the history about the hot car bills, a few years ago, one passed to cover children in hot cars. It was originally introduced to cover humans and animals. And it was decided that in order to get them passed, it needed to split into two bills, an animal one and one to protect children. The one for children passed, so that's good news, but the one for animals just kind of stalled and hasn't gone anywhere. But every single year there's a hot car bill, and clearly people really want one passed. So it's a good idea to let your legislators know that you would like to see a hot car bill passed. This particular bill needs to be amended with some language to provide civil immunity to fully protect someone from trying to save an animal from a hot car. But hot car legislation is definitely needed. Senate Bill 57, assistance dogs, filed by Jimmy Higdon. Jimmy Higdon is a friend to the animals, and he's a fantastic senator and easy to talk to. For those of you who he is your senator, I recommend reaching out to him. He is always willing to listen, and he likes trying to help the animals. This bill provides extra protections for assistance dogs and training, and protects against individuals abusing the designation of assistance dog. You know, you've heard the stories about people saying they have an assistance dog, and then it turns out that there's a situation that happens with the dog, and the dog's not actually an assistance dog. So this would protect for that, and also protect dogs that are assistance dogs. So it's a good bill to support. Senate Bill 59. This is a pet store bill. It was filed by Senator Denise Harper Angel. Cost of care is our priority legislation this year, and extreme weather legislation is near and dear to my heart. But man, this is one of my favorite bills. This is a badly needed bill that would protect the public from pet stores selling dogs that come from breeders, and likely it would help reduce backyard breeding operations. Thank you, Senator Denise Harper Angel, for introducing this legislation. I definitely recommend supporting SB 59 and letting your legislators know about that. All right, SB 82, Senate Bill 82. This is breed-specific legislation, but not in the way that you have heard about breed-specific legislation in the past. This is actually a good breed-specific legislation. This bill would prohibit localities from adopting breed-specific legislation, such as banning ownership of pit bulls. So it was filed by Senator Adrian Southworth, and I recommend supporting this bill as well. So that sums up the Kentucky animal bills that are currently introduced, but stay tuned because we already know of some more that are coming down the pipe. So be sure and follow the Facebook pages of Kentucky Animal Action, or Kentuckians Vote for Animals, or Making a Difference Now. We'll be updating you guys regularly on there. The session has a few more weeks before it's over, but be sure to contact your legislators in all the ways we recommended. Earlier in the session is better because the last few weeks of the session, often the decision-making process is over and they're tying up loose ends. So the earlier you reach out to them, the better. And the Kentucky legislative session is quite short. It's usually 30 or 60 days every year, once a year. And this year it's the short session, and it's also a budget year, which ties up a lot of the time. So reach out to them as soon as possible, and that is the most important thing that you can do. All right, in closing, I just want to review a few things that you can do to help Kentucky animals. Remember the acronym LAW, legislators, awareness, and working together. Cultivate healthy relationships with your legislators. Awareness, recognize that awareness and education are key, and also working together because we're stronger as a team. Week of action, we're going to have the week of action following today's event. So be sure and follow KentuckyAnimalAction.org or our Facebook page. And we'll have some exciting things going on from tomorrow all the way till the end of next week. So look out for that. For those of you that missed the link to the public folder for supplemental documents, that is http://bit.ly/KAAD21 handouts. And that is case sensitive. So be sure to capitalize KAAD. Also, this event will be available for later viewing, either through your Zoom registration or on Facebook Live. Please contact your legislators and let them know that animal welfare is important to you. For more information about reaching out to your legislators and to find out who they are, go to legislature.ky.gov. Special thanks to Dr. Mary Lou Randor, Grayson County Attorney Jeremy Logsdon, Animal Control Officer Jai Hamilton, Senator Julie Rocky Adams, Senator Morgan McGarvey, and Representative Sherilyn Stevenson, and all other legislators who are friends to the animals. We are so lucky to have you, and we appreciate all that you do. I would also like to thank our partners for today's event. Kentuckians Vote for Animals and Making a Difference Now. It feels so good to be partnering for our events, and we definitely are stronger as a team, and I've loved working with both of those groups. So we have, it is 12 o'clock, and we have 15 minutes before the Kentuckians Vote for Animals rally starts. This 15 minutes will be left open for an optional Q&A or a break time before the rally starts. We will leave the floor open if you want to submit questions on Facebook, or if you would like to submit them here on the Zoom Q&A, we will answer them. Otherwise, we will use this time as a break before the Kentuckians Vote for Animals rally starts. Hannah, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I was just rambling to myself. We have a few questions in the comments from Michelle. She asked how to get the ACO in her county to do anything about dogs that are being left out in the cold. And she said also how to get in touch with the county animal shelter as well. Joy or Michelle, I'd love for you all to talk about reporting abuse and how to get somebody's attention.
I'll let Joy take that one. She is an expert on reporting abuse. And Joy, if you would like, I can pull up the how to report abuse brochure while you're talking, if that's helpful.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you very much. First of all, there was another question in there about getting the county animal control officer to do something and when they're not. And I understand that it can be very hard. It can also be very hard to get law enforcement to do anything on cases that they don't feel warrant the attention that the rest of us feel like the attention's warranted for. So honestly, the thing I would do is go talk to them and say, what do you want me to do? What do you need from me to get you to do something about this case? Now, also understand that there's no definition for shelter in Kentucky state law. Now, there may be in county ordinances, but in Kentucky state law, we do not have any definition for what it constitutes adequate shelter. And I have seen law enforcement say that the dog's up on a covered porch, so that's adequate shelter. And we all know it's not when the weather's extreme. There's just no two ways about it. It's not. So at that point, what I would do is I would go talk to that officer. And then if I didn't get satisfaction from that, I would go talk to his supervisor or the, if you're talking about animal control officer, then I think the next person to talk to would be the magistrate or the judge executive, and tell them that this is the other thing you need to do. You need to come prepared. You need to know the laws in your state and your county and come armed for bear. Okay. I think Hannah also mentioned this as well. And this is the whole key about education, educating yourself, and then educating the people that you're talking to about, number one, the law, and number two, your expectations of how they're going to enforce that law. And understand that the judge executive is a and the sheriff on county sheriff are both elected officials, and they need to listen to their constituents. There's just no two ways about it. But you need to be a knowledgeable constituent to go in there armed for bear, tell them, I know the law, here is the law, and why isn't it being enforced? But the other thing you can do is help them by providing video, providing photos. I would keep a diary. I would say, and I told witnesses of domestic violence this too. Keep a diary, date, time it happened, what happened, who witnessed it, etc. Also understand these photos and video become very important because animals have fur, so you don't see the bruising. And I can tell you animal control doesn't have what we in law enforcement had for domestic violence and child abuse victims, the forensic tools that we use to tell if there's bruising that's not visible underneath the skin. And so animal control simply cannot tell you if there's bruising underneath that animal. Plus animals are so stoic, they may not even show broken bones or cracked bones. They may not display that. So, that's where video and photos really become important. You can sit there and say all day long that, yeah, this man was kicking his dog. His dog was yelping. I could hear it. I could hear it yelping all the way in the backyard. And I came out and I saw it. This is what I saw. but if it's a he said, she said at that point. So video and photos are really, really important. Get the names and titles of everyone you talk to when you report the abuse. And once again, if you do not believe it was handled correctly, go talk to them. Say, why wasn't this handled like this? What do you need from me? What's the problem here? So, I mean, I always encourage that first because, as I said with the example of no definition of adequate shelter, that may be the whole problem, because we need to get this law changed to give them more tools to handle these cases. So, and this is also where a healthy conversation comes into play. But at the same time, if you're still not getting what you need and you feel like there is definite case of abuse that any reasonable person would be able to consider abuse, then you need to go up their chain. And in some of these counties, you can call the Kentucky State Police. They are usually, not always, but usually good at handling animal abuse cases. But they will not respond to complaints in counties with large local enforcement agencies such as Lexington, Jefferson County, Barron County, and some of the northern Kentucky counties. But in the more rural counties, they certainly will respond and have done some fantastic work out there. So, and also, once again, know your law, know your legislators, know what the shortcomings are of the laws in Kentucky so you can help change them, and get conversations going with your local officials. Those are the big things that I can tell you. And when it's a good old boy system, I get it. There's no two ways about it. That goes on. And it's very hard to get a judge executive to fire someone who's not doing a good job when it's the judge executive's nephew. And I understand that. But at the same time, you can still expect them to do the job that you as a taxpayer are paying them to do. And that's where you need to concentrate on. Okay? Anything else?
Okay, I'd like to note that this document that you see on your screen right now, How to Report Animal Abuse in Kentucky, that is on the public drive that we gave you guys the address to earlier. It's on there for you to download, print, whatever you need to use it for, along with a lot of other documents, supplemental information that we talked about today. And it says at the bottom, and I just want to reiterate, it's not legal advice. It's our personal opinions and out of our experience, the best way we think to go about it. So again, it's not legal advice, but it's on there for you guys. Let's see. Do we have some more questions? Okay. My county does not have an official ACO. Joy, I mean, every county, we have 120 counties in Kentucky, and by state law, they either have to have ACO or shelter, or they have to contract with another county to do animal control. Joy, can you speak to if a county doesn't have an ACO, and then I hear people saying they also, I think it was Bath County, had complaints about only 7 dogs had gone to the shelter they contract with in a matter of many years or something like that. So what do people do if there's not active animal control in their county?
Okay, well, the county judge is, as you said, breaking the law, because the Kentucky state law requires them to have a shelter or contract with a shelter, and the same way with animal control. So, but in saying that, I also know that you have counties in Kentucky, and one in particular, Owsley County, is not only the poorest county in the state of Kentucky, but also the poorest county in the whole United States. So clearly, it's not always that they don't care about animals, but they cannot afford to do what they're supposed to do under Kentucky state law. In those cases, then law enforcement has to step up to do animal control duties. And in fact, I did a study on this in 2019. It's not published because this was just for my information, and I've shared it quite a few times. But to see how many counties in Kentucky were allowed animal control to do what they are legally allowed to do under Kentucky state law, and that was less than 2/3. So, I mean, the 1/3 of the state's counties or less allow animal control to do everything that they're told they can do in Kentucky state law. 50% of those counties that don't allow animal control to do anything don't allow them to investigate animal control at all. You have counties like Jefferson, Fayette, and many others that they have full authority under Kentucky state law. Then you have counties that the next step down is where they have an ACO, but the judge executive says, I don't want you to write citations, which you are allowed to do, but I don't want you to do, because I want you to go to the county attorney's office and take a warrant instead. And this is to make sure that there's a probable cause, et cetera. In 50% of this other counties, the judge executive says, I don't want you to investigate animal cruelty at all. I want that left up to, well, he doesn't even say. At that point, you have to call law enforcement. Now, the problem with that is law enforcement is not trained. And I've been a Kentucky state, a certified Kentucky police instructor for 30 years now. And I can tell you that they are not trained to investigate animal cruelty in the state. There's no training for it at all. And that's why we're really pushing to get a bill introduced, which we think is going to be introduced this year, to mandate law enforcement in the state of Kentucky be trained on not only animal abuse, but also on the link between that and animal cruelty. And that and crimes against people, so that when they make an animal cruelty run, they know to look beyond the call for service, to look to see who else might be being abused or what other crimes might be being committed, such as animal fighting, cockfighting, etc. So they can handle it all at one time. So, and I think I'm done with that. If anybody's got any more questions, I can answer real quick.
Thank you, Joy. We have another question about how to find out how our legislators voted. So Kentucky, unfortunately, doesn't make it very easy to know how your legislators voted. The best way that I would recommend is to look at old bills. So for example, last year we heard a lot about Senate Bill 21, which was the veterinary reporting bill. And if you go and look back at that old bill, you can see a voting record and see how your legislator voted and how other legislators voted as well. Same thing for current bills. And you do that by going to legislature.ky.gov, and you go to legislation and then whatever the session, and then you pick House or Senate bills. And I think that wraps it up for the questions that we've got, Michelle.
Yep, I believe so. It looks like we don't have any other pending questions, and we are about 1 minute from the Kentuckians Vote for Animals rally starting, which is always a very exciting event and a phenomenal part of our day. And I'm going to turn it over so they can get started when they're ready. Thank you for joining us today, and stick around for the Kentuckians Vote for Animals rally. It's going to be a good one.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for the handoff there. And let's see here. I want to welcome everybody to the Kentuckians Vote for Animals 2021 rally. Can somebody let me know for sure they can hear us?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us. We're excited to be here, and thank everyone for dialing in today. My name is Jamie Lawson. I'm going to be the MC for the rally today. This is the third year in a row I've been involved with the rally, and I'm excited to be back here today helping out. And just to introduce myself real quick, I run a Facebook page called Men's Voices for Kentucky's Animals, which is geared towards getting more involvement out of the man of Kentucky to help all the women leaders who fight in this cause that we know needs all the help it can get. And I want to just say, why are we here today? Why are we doing this? And so we're here to support the animals in Kentucky and to support the work that you all do as animal lovers, animal welfare advocates, shelter workers, so much more. And so we're here to support you guys and give you guys some tools to go out and do what we need to do to help make things better for Kentucky animals. We want to grow the numbers of supporters that are active doing what we're doing today, talking to legislators, trying to get laws passed. We want to support those people and grow those numbers so that the legislators can hear your voice. Also, we want to demand better animal welfare laws in the state of Kentucky. And part of that is learning about the laws that are in place and putting action with the tools you're learning here today to get out and really push your legislators, let them know how you feel. And you learned a lot about that today, and we're here to rally that up today. Kentuckians Vote for Animals. Who is Kentuckians Vote for Animals? Well, they're a nonprofit organization that seeks to unite voters in the state of Kentucky that are animal lovers and to lobby for better animal welfare laws and protections. And so that's who we're here today, Kentuckians Vote for Animals, to do this rally and get you guys to support these laws we're pushing for. And so with that, I want to introduce our first speaker of the day. She is Melissa Barlow Bowman. Melissa is the president of Kentuckians Vote for Animals. She is a past board member of the Paris Animal Welfare Society, and she is a board member of the Kentucky Coalition for Animal Protection and Paris Bourbon County Feline Lifelines. Please welcome Melissa Barlow Bowman.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm Melissa with KVFA. We do want to thank you all for being here with us today. Hopefully next year we can all be back together at the Capitol next year. But we do want to thank Jamie for emceeing and Madden for the technical help. And Michelle went through most all of the animal bills that are filed this session on cost of care, hot cars, domestic violence. There is also Senate Bill 59 on pet stores, which was filed by Denise Harper Angel, and that would keep pet stores from being able to sell dogs, cats, or rabbits. If they offered them, they would have to just offer them for adoption. And also Senate Bill 82, which is anti-breed-specific legislation, which was filed by Adrian Southworth. There is also a bill, House Bill 229, which would deal with damage to livestock. That was filed by Matt Cook. That would be able to increase some fines, monetary fines for damage. So that would be another good way to go about helping animals. Right now, I believe most, if not all, of these bills are still in the Committee on Committees, and they haven't been assigned to actual committees to act on yet. So please do be reaching out to your legislators. You can call and leave a message for them at 1-800-372-7181. So right now, that's probably the most important things that we can be doing. Right now, I want to invite Representative Sherilyn Stevenson, who's with us, to speak.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being on today. I really appreciate you guys. If you don't know about me, I am the representative from the 88th District, which is the southeast portion of Lexington. And I have always been a huge animal lover. I grew up on a farm. My husband and I elected not to have children, so our fur babies are our only kids, and it's really funny. I'm going to show you all this mug. Look, a coworker here got this for me. It's a, ooh, it says, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to have children and a cat," because I'm the crazy cat lady. I have 3 cats. They are siblings. They are peanut butter and jelly, and I even have a little paw right here because I always want to carry them with me. And when my husband and I first got married, we got a kitten after we had only been dating about 2 weeks, and I got a kitten, and he lived for 18 years, and so we really didn't know our relationship outside of Slick. And so we were just absolutely devastated when we lost him. So I got that tattoo to always remember our first baby together. And so we just, we love animals, and the thoughts of people hurting them, especially intentionally, oh my gosh, just absolutely breaks my heart. So when I decided to run for office, one thing that we noticed, we were going all around the district, knocking on doors, asking for folks to vote for me, were that all of my neighbors had animals too. Probably almost 9 out of 10 houses had them. So we actually started carrying dog treats and cat treats around, and it went over really well. And I knew then that was an issue that was going to be near and dear to my constituents' hearts as well once I was elected. So I decided to start trying to help these furry babies. And I am proud that last year we were able to get the veterinary bill passed. And I have 2 bills filed this year. One is House Bill 99, which is a hot car law. Obviously, I'm sure most of you who follow these things know that most states already have a hot car law. And unfortunately, Kentucky is lagging behind. After the vet bill passed last year, we got a small bump in the rankings. We're no longer dead last, but I am bound and determined to get us going way up that list. So I think that the bill that I have right now that is showing the most promise is the cost of care bill, and that is House Bill 100. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you and just show you a few things that I have. We're going to go here first. So here, obviously, we have some adorable babies, but this was something that actually got sent out just yesterday to all of my colleagues in the House. Representative Banta, Kim Banta out of Northern Kentucky, is my primary co-sponsor on this bill. So she and I sent a letter out to all of our colleagues, asking them, explaining the bill and asking them to co-sponsor the bill. This went with it. And just saying that cost of animal care laws establish a civil process so that any individual who's had his or her animals lawfully seized due to cruelty may be required to pay for, for the animal's care. And we have lots of other states that have actually enacted that. And I actually have a map here. So cost of animal care laws by state, as you can see, several. I believe that there are 17. I think I counted the other day, but maybe I counted wrong, or maybe I was counting about something else. But have of effective cost of care laws. Some have less, and then there we are as Kentucky with no effective law whatsoever. So we definitely want to move on. I know that many of you were probably on the Zoom earlier today and heard Lieutenant Hamilton talk a lot about hoarding cases here in the state. And she and I met a couple years ago and decided that we were going to try to work on all of this stuff together. And so she was instrumental in helping us get this bill, off the ground and started. And obviously, we know that one of the greatest obstacles for law enforcement is, them enforcing animal cruelty laws are the costs that are associated with what they do with seized animals. We know that cost can just, could go on for months and months at a time, sometimes even years at a time, and it can lead to significant cost to the people that are trying to care for them, the shelters that are doing that, and sometimes that even leads to taxpayer dollars that are starting to do that. And just a few examples that we are all familiar with are obviously the Trixie Foundation. We're all really familiar with that. I believe that she specifically talked about the Fayette County cat hoarding situation earlier, and in Franklin County, the 38 pit bull breed dogs that were seized from a dogfighting operation. And, we're looking at 75,000, 80,000, only 15 days, almost $7,000. So it's a lot of work. And so I just wanted to give you a little overview of how this bill works, so you all can speak about it, to your friends, to your families, but also when you're trying to talk to some of these legislators, if they need help in understanding. This was sent out to them in the packet as well. But obviously, law enforcement seizes animals in an animal cruelty case and provides owner notice of seizure and a declaration of ownership form. The owner must claim ownership of the seized animals by completing the form after within 5 days. Obviously, if the owner fails at that point to claim ownership, the animals are forfeited at that point and can be placed in new homes. The seizing agency petitions for hearing to request the owner be responsible for costs if they did complete the form. Because those costs, while we're waiting for that case to be prosecuted, can, as we mentioned earlier, that can go on for a very, very long time. The owner is then given expedited cost of care hearing within 10 to 15 days after the owner is notified. The seizing agency must be present and present evidence that the seizure was warranted based on Kentucky law. And then the judge will determine if the seizure was warranted, and if so, the owner would then is ordered to post a bond to cover the costs of the animal care while the case is being prosecuted. And here we see, if the owner makes regular bond payments, which the seizing agency uses for animal care while it's prosecuted, then it goes on down. Either the owner is convicted of animal cruelty and the animals are forfeited to the agency, or the owner is acquitted, and at that point, the animals can be returned to him or her. But at that point, if the owner fails to make that bond payment, then at that point, the seized animals are forfeited. And while it is not in the current form of the bill, we have been in talks. Fingers crossed that the bill does move forward, and when we get that bill into committee, there'll be a committee sub that will definitely add in protection for the offspring of any animals that are seized while pregnant. So I know that was a really important step that folks have been concerned about this bill, and we intend to take care of that as the bill moves forward. Just yesterday, actually, Representative Massey joined the bill as a co-sponsor. He is the chair of Judiciary, so he is a really great person to call and leave a message for, or to email. And that is actually the absolute best way that you can help us out. So again, you're going to hear this many times today, but the legislative message line is 1-800-372-7181. And when you call, the nicest group of people in the world will answer the phone. If it's the first time that you've called in, they're going to take your name, your address, your phone number, your email, if you want to give that as well. And then in the future, when you call in, your information will pop right up. And the phone call doesn't need to be as long, but they're very efficient. They're very quick. You can choose to send messages directly to your representatives, which once they put your address in, that will automatically populate on there. But you can also say, I want to leave a message for every single person in the house. Or you can say, I would like to leave a message for every person on the Judiciary Committee or the Health and Welfare Committee. So I hope that you all are calling about these bills, but I hope that you're calling about a lot of other bills as well. but I always encourage people to do double the work. So we need you to call, but we also need you to email. And when you go to the LRC website, which is just legislature.ky.gov, and you go in to look at the legislators, every single person's email is listed on their on their legislator profile. Now, a little secret that I like to tell everybody is when you call that legislative message line and those nice folks put your message into the system, that means that then our legislative assistants have to pull that information down. So they can either put that into like an Excel spreadsheet format and send to us, or they can print those out on what you all have probably seen and heard referred to as green slips. And that just gets printed on paper that's green, so that's why they get called that. And they give those to us. But again, just to be sure that we're doing our due diligence, just in case there's a legislator that does not have their LA pulling those for them, you want to also follow that up with an email. I would be more than happy to take any questions if anybody has those, but I just want to thank you all so much for being the wonderful advocates that you are for the voiceless. You know, we all want to imagine animals in loving homes that take care of them with owners that treat them with the dignity and love and reverence that they all deserve. But unfortunately, we know that doesn't always happen. So thank you all so much for being out there to stand up for those who can't speak for themselves.
Okay, thank you, Representative Stevenson. Has anyone got any questions? She has done an excellent job. And I know that we're all excited to have someone with a heart and a fight for the animals that she brings to Kentucky. I don't know if we have any questions. Anybody got anything to chime in with?
Okay. Well,
okay,
great.
thank you very much again.
Yes, y'all yell at me anytime. Thanks so much.
Okay, guys. We were scheduled next to have Representative Patty Minter. She could not be with us today. And so we're going to move forward in our speaker list here. And our next speaker is going to be Christian Nash. Just to give you a little background on Christian, she is a former director of the Paris Animal Welfare Society and was the manager of animal health and welfare at the Lexington Humane Society. I want to welcome Christian Nash to speak now.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me. My microphone was getting me fixed the other day, but maybe it's better now. It's also kind of dark, but here we are. So I just want to say thank you for inviting me to speak. And for people that are listening, it's been an amazing presentation all day. I'm impressed just with the amount of knowledge that's going on. And I just want to point out that I am like the most average, regular citizen ever. I'm not very political. I don't attend rallies. I put on my best fleece for this occasion. I changed out of a hoodie. So I am like, I vote, and that's what I do. So this is kind of cool for me to experience. But I was asked to talk about what I've seen when I worked in animal welfare. And when I worked at Cause, we were involved in a dog hoarding case. And Cynthia, who's going to speak soon, was with me to make me more normal. Before we went into that house, I had just found out that I was 7 weeks pregnant with my daughter, who just turned 15 yesterday, 2 days ago. And I hadn't told anyone at work yet, so I was standing outside this house, and the odor was horrific. Trying to decide what I was going to do because I knew that I was pregnant, but I also couldn't.
Christian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if the mic can be repositioned. We really want to hear what you're talking about, and I want to make sure we don't miss it. I didn't know if there was a way to reposition the mic or something.
I can try to get closer. I don't know. My microphone hates me.
I actually can hear you pretty good now.
Oh, good. Well, I just get closer.
Yeah, I think that's a little better. I'm sorry. We didn't hear the last several sentences, but I think we can hear you better now. Please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I was saying that when I was in Paris at the Paris Animal Welfare Society shelter, Cindy and I had a dog hoarding case, and I had just found out that I was pregnant with my daughter who turned 15 2 days ago. And I hadn't told anyone at work. So we were standing outside this house, and in my head, I was debating on what I was going to do because, you know, the things that you see on TV, these houses are terrible. But I went in anyway, and this was before the age of PPE. So we go into this house, and what you see on TV is nothing compared to what you see in real life. The smell is horrific. It burns your eyes, it burns your throat. Every animal that you see is squinting and has horrific upper respiratory just from the ammonia, from the amount of urine. Most of them have skin issues because they've been scalded by their own urine because they can't escape it. So we went into this house, and I can't remember exactly how many dogs they were, but they never went outside. And there was maybe, Cynthia will have the number, but I'm going to say there was 85 to 90 dogs in this house. One female dog was giving birth underneath the bed, and the other dogs were running under the bed and taking the babies that she was giving birth to and eating them. That's probably my biggest memory from that house, besides the smell and besides how many showers we had to take afterwards just to get the smell off of us. Just the manpower alone and the stress on the animals from removing them from that hoarding situation, because you get them out of that and you take them to the shelter, which is not at all equipped to take 89 dogs in one day. And then you have to separate them because we can't house them in a hoarding environment. So you have to separate them in kennels. But then the animals are extremely stressed because they're used to living on top of 89 other animals. So it really goes from a horrible situation to a less than ideal situation for the animals' mentality and their stress level. And then you add manpower, overtime hours, how much it costs to take care of these dogs. The fact that we don't have supplies for 89 dogs in one time or at one time. So it's really just like a mass panic, like MASH operation of just trying to make sure that we are doing the best we can for these animals that we have just taken. And then so then turns around, we have to turn around and bring the vet in to do vet care, which is crazy expensive. And the vet that helped us obviously gives us a discounted rate, but vaccinating 89 animals, feeding 89 animals, and treating their skin condition and medicating them is just an overwhelming amount of work, especially for a small shelter like Paris. Paris is pretty advanced for how small that we were. And the conditions were terrible. I remember the oddest things. Like I remember the TV being on, which I thought was kind of a lovely gesture of this person to leave a TV on for their animals, which is just what normal people do. Normal people leave to go to work and they leave the TV on so their animal won't be bored. And so like Days of Our Lives was on when we were there. And I thought it was so odd that caretaking quality was left for these animals. However, they were living in their own filth. The floor was really hard to walk on because it was just blankets and newspapers and more blankets, and just to cover up or try to cover up the fecal material in the urine. But the ammonia that was rising out of it, you could literally see the waves like in the air, how much just damaging fumes there were. All of the dogs had eye issues. I think there was one cat, and he was up high. I think he was on top of the TV, and I was like, man, you're the smartest thing here because you can get on top of the TV. And he was just sort of looking around like, this is crazy. This is my life. And we were lucky at Paris in the fact that the owner surrendered the animals after a little bit of pressure from us. So we were able to spay and neuter them and place them pretty quickly. But the cost of care of doing that, of spaying and neutering them and sending them to rescue or trying to get them adopted with manpower, and again, everything that we have to go through is just astronomical. And then when I was in Lexington, we ended up working with another county on a hoarding situation. A woman lived in a single wide trailer. She'd had her kids taken away because of the condition of the trailer. And she had 4 dogs and I think 97 cats living in her single wide trailer with her. Again, the kids were taken away, and she was more concerned with giving her cats away than she was getting her children back. And the county that she lived in basically wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Their county attorney wouldn't touch it. Their ACO, which is their animal control officer, wouldn't touch it. And I think all of that, from if you've been listening all day, is just because these cases don't go anywhere, and they don't go anywhere, and then they cost thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. So luckily at Lexington, we were actually low on cats at the time. So we, when animal advocates from their county reached out, we were able to go in and help. The first time I made contact with her, I went alone, and basically my strategy was just to go in, make friends with her, basically convince her that how she was living was okay, and I was just here to help her. And the best way to help her cats, whom she loved desperately, was to let me have them so that I could find them better homes. But she had names for every single one of them. She had cleaned up her house as best she could when I got there. But still, I mean, the ammonia from the urine was ridiculous. She was hiding cats in her bedroom so I couldn't see them. They all had horrific flea and ear mites and eye issues, and were like climbing up my leg when I got there. And so I think the first time I took 25, and I ended up going back 3 or 4 times. She had cats in her freezer right next to the ice cream. She was horrifically, I think she was embarrassed, just because she loved these cats so much. And I think we were lucky in the fact that she realized that how she was making them live was not the right way for these cats to live. And the entire goal was her to get rid of enough cats to get her children back. But she didn't speak to me about that. She only spoke to me about wanting to know where every cat went, which obviously we're not going to release adopter information. But I formed this relationship with her so that I could get these cats away from her, because obviously they shouldn't keep living in that environment where they have hardly any fur, infested with fleas. And like Lieutenant Hamilton was saying, hoarding animals come out with just incredibly difficult medical conditions. A lot of them have chronic diarrhea. A lot of them can't absorb nutrients from regular cat food because they're being fed whatever. I fostered a cat from the Kelly cat case in Lexington, and this cat would basically assault us for human food and then would just vomit regular cat food. And so she just had like this chronic irritable bowel syndrome, and was just a really weird cat. But I really like hoarding case animals because I like watching. I think their behavior is fascinating because they are in survival mode the entire time. So they group together and they pack together and they start thinking, as an entire group, not as an individual animal. So when you bring them in to a shelter and then they have all these people poking at them, they actually get really overwhelmed and look for something to bond with. Sometimes it's a person, most of the time it's another animal, but it is incredibly interesting what goes on, and horrible. And it's great if anyone's ever worked in animal welfare, when you get a cruelty case in, you're so happy because we've removed that animal from that situation, but now we have XYZ challenges of keeping them happy and healthy because they're used to, they've been starving. You can't feed them if you want to feed them cheeseburgers, but you can't feed them cheeseburgers because that's going to make them sick. So it's a whole fine art of really housing them in the shelter, just so they can be happy and healthy. And a lot of them do turn out to be happy, somewhat healthy, despite the veterinary care that they will need. But it is a big time undertaking. I will say it can be hard for especially county people to muster up the gumption to go after it because it's going to be so expensive, that you have this huge reason why we shouldn't take action. However, the bigger reason is these animals are living, a horrible life, and we can help them. But monetarily wise, I mean, it can decimate the shelter. It can just food and vaccines that we have to buy. So I think this group and the speakers have been really interesting and hopefully really helpful in getting the bill passed, that House Bill 100. And hopefully we do some good.
Okay, thank you, Christian. That was an excellent story to share with us, or stories to share with us. You did a great job, and it really brings into focus what we're dealing with here in the state. And there are great people out there doing their part to take care of, trying to help these animals out, and why we need better laws. So thank you very much for coming and speaking today at the rally. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to introduce our next speaker. It is Cynthia Criswell, and Cynthia is the treasurer for Kentuckians Vote for Animals. She was a founding member of the Paris Animal Welfare Society and served for many years as a board member and volunteer rescue coordinator. She is also a past board member for the Woodford Humane Society. Again, I want to welcome Cynthia Criswell to speak today at the rally.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate the introduction. We are so sad that we can't be there in person, because the rallies are so much more exciting when we have people marching up to the Capitol and chanting. And so we missed that. And we thank you for attending the virtual rally. I just want to talk, sorry, it's the same theme, cost of care, because it's so important. And I want to talk to you again about how you can help. But as been said before, when you take in a severely ill, neglected, or injured animal and you multiply that by 5, 10, 50, 100, it's a huge drain on the shelters. And small counties have very small shelters, if any shelter, because they may be contracting with another county for their animal control. So even if there is a shelter in these small communities, the budget's very, very small, if any, for animal medical care. So a lot of, it's been said before, a lot of these extreme hoarding cases just go unchecked because they're in some small community. The judge executive knows if he allows the animal control officer to pull these animals in, the county will be out thousands and thousands of dollars that they don't have. So, so they go unchecked. And so as we know from being on the ground, as Christian said, I helped with that one hoarding case. I've helped with a couple others since then. The removal of the animals is traumatic, and the amount of work that's required is huge, because you are, as she said, a MASH unit. You are documenting, assessing, vaccinating, deworming, defleeing, heartworm testing, and feline leukemia testing if they're cats. And some counties don't even have a vet in their county. I mean, it's hard to imagine that you could live in a county that there's no vet. So then you have the logistics of bringing a vet in or taking the animals to that vet. So that's lots of time, lots of energy, and lots of money. So, so once you get through that initial assessment and the immediate needs, then you have to look at these animals as far as, what else do they need? They may have major medical issues, skin issues, parasite issues, dermatitis, flea dermatitis, so many things that have to be addressed quickly, and ongoing cost that, you don't just treat these things with one pill or one treatment. And then on top of that, you have just the daily care of cleaning, feeding, watering, exercising, cleaning up. So you need staff to do that. And we know in these large hoarding situations, there are donations that come in. If it's out in the news, you're going to get a pile of food and Clorox and paper towels, and you may have enough of that for a couple of months. And you'll get some donations that may cover some of the initial costs, but the ongoing care, because Kentucky does not have a cost of care bill, is huge. And national groups won't help us because they know they're going to get stuck with all these costs. So it's up to local groups to do this. And unfortunately, most local groups don't have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to step up and help these animals. So the hoarders know that that they're probably not going to get prosecuted. They're probably not going to get raided, but occasionally that does happen. And so, you know, when a hoarder does get their animals confiscated, they know that they're not on the hook for any of these costs, probably, because they continue to drag it out. They'll fire their attorney. Their attorney will get a continuance. You know, and of course, COVID has just completely turned us upside down. You know, we have a hoarding case that's been going on for 2.5 years and still has not gone to trial, and those animals are waiting. And on top of that, you know, in Kentucky, generally it takes 1 year to 2 to 3 years for a trial to go to court. And there are some hoarders who will not turn over their animals. So this cost of care bill is so important because it puts the hoarder or the abuser on the hook for the cost. And Cheryl Lynn explained, you know, how that happens. You know, within a few days of that seizure, there's a court hearing and evidence is presented. The judge hopefully will say these animals are going to be held. The abuser, the hoarder, is directed to pay a reasonable cost of care. And that first payment is made within 10 days of that hearing. If they don't make that payment, the animals are forfeited and those animals can be placed. And then if they do make that payment, they have to continue to make those payments to the court every 30 days. So if they miss a payment, the animals are forfeited. So this is so important. It may be the most important legislation we've seen recently. So it comes down to how do we make this happen? You know, we need to contact, as we've said, our representatives and ask them to support House Bill 100. And then, as we said, the first time I called the legislative hotline, I thought, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, this is going to be just a train wreck. And the nicest lady answered, and she said, you know, she stepped me through it. She took my information. I knew who my representative was. If you don't, I think they'll help you with that. If you don't know, I'm sure that you can look in the information that Kentucky Animal Action Day has presented on their website, on our website, Kentuckians Vote for Animals. You know, if you just like our pages on Facebook, we will let you know when something's going on and when you need to call, and we'll list that number for you. But that legislative hotline number is 1-800-372-7181. And of course, once it gets through the House, you know, then it'll be before the Senate, and then you'll need to call your senator. So, you know, just keep up with our pages and we'll step you through it. And when you call, all you have to say, you know, is please support House Bill 100 and please consider co-sponsoring. You know, the more co-sponsors a bill has, the better chance it has. So that's an important thing to say when you call. But I think that's it. I appreciate the time, and I'll turn it back to Jamie.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Excellent job again. We want to thank you for coming in here and bringing your heart and all that you do for Kentucky's Vote for Animals. Now we have a special presentation. We've got an award. It's the Law Enforcement Hero Award. And with us today is going to be Joy Keeley, who's a board member for Kentuckians Vote for Animals, to present this award to a very special person.
Thank you, Jamie. And I can't tell you what an honor this is to make this presentation. I discussed this last night with Brittany, and I truly, truly mean everything I'm saying in my presentation here. But as I stated before, I'm in the middle of a 3-year study on animal cruelty in Kentucky. So I am getting all of these open records requests from law enforcement across the state. And Deputy Price's reports and citations clearly stand out as exceptional. I can't tell you how much they stand out. Her consistently detailed and thorough investigations on animal abuse cases show a high level of dedicated compassion for animals, and exemplary law enforcement work. As an example, in 2018, Deputy Price initially responded on a suspicious vehicle. However, in attempting to contact the registered owner of it at his home, Deputy Price found a Boston type terrier in the front yard, so emaciated and weak it could not stand. Deputy Price seized the animal due to its condition, even though she was almost bitten in doing so. The dog was so hungry, it ate everything she offered to him. Sadly, despite finally getting care, the dog passed away. 3 days later, upon returning to the owner's home, she found 2 dogs in a very small pen without food or water. One dog was extremely malnourished and covered in fleas, so Deputy Price seized this dog as well. For the next 11 days, every day she worked, she returned to the home attempting to contact the owner. When she finally made contact, the owner told her the Boston type terrier had been hit by a car and afterward had refused to eat. And this is in contradiction to what Deputy Price saw for herself when she seized the dog. In regard to the other seized dog, the owner stated that the dog in the pen with it would fight that dog for food. I mean, and basically he was obviously okay with this. You know, it was almost like survival of the fittest going on inside that pen. Deputy Price requested he sign the dog over so the dog could be adopted, which the owner agreed to do. But that's not enough. Then she charged this person with cruelty second, and he ultimately pled guilty to this crime. And let me tell you, this is law enforcement work at its finest. All law enforcement should look beyond the initial call for service to determine if other crimes are being committed, and even more importantly, to determine if there are victims who need help, regardless of the species of the victim. Not only did Deputy Price do this, but she continued every day to return to the home, and in doing so, saved the life of another of the owner's victims and brought him to justice for his crimes. We highly commend Deputy Price for her work and thank her for her service. It is my pleasure to present her with this award. Thank you so much, Deputy Price.
Thank you, Joy. I appreciate your kind words. And it's nice to finally see you in person. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm having to use my cell phone, but I'm so honored to be involved in this rally. It's been a real eye opener, and I'm so glad I was able to be a part of it with you. Honestly, I was completely shocked when Sheriff Boggs said that I was selected to receive this award. I honestly didn't even know something like this existed, but I've just always said that I wanted to be a voice for those who don't have one, whether it be animals, children, or the elderly. And then to officially be recognized for my efforts is absolutely amazing. I'm just so honored to have my working knowledge in this way by both the Kentucky Link Coalition and the Kentuckians Vote for Animals. And I want to personally thank you for writing my letter of recommendation and nominating me for this award. I know we haven't got to personally meet yet, but we've been corresponding a lot via email, and it seems like we both have a strong passion and desire to help animals, and I look forward to hopefully working with you in the future. I also wanted to point out that Mason County, all of our deputies, the chief deputy, and even the sheriff are certified through the Kentucky Animal Care and Control Association. We're actually animal care technicians. When the previous animal control officer retired in 2018, I proposed to the sheriff that our office should take over his duties, and we did. And I feel like we've made great strides in helping animals. It just made sense because typically we're the first ones on scene when an animal-related call comes in. And unfortunately, though, taking over these responsibilities, I've encountered many abused and neglected animals, but our office is doing the best that we can to charge and convict these offenders. And I want to say that in the case that you referred to in your letter of recommendation, the dog did unfortunately pass away. And I strongly remember when the veterinarian, JT Williams from Colonial Heights, contacted me and told me that the dog didn't make it. I just broke down and cried. I'm such an animal lover, and I was really hoping that I got to him on time. I did charge the owner, and a criminal summons was issued. When it finally did go to district court, unfortunately, one of the charges of animal cruelty was dropped. He received a fine of $163 and 90 days in jail. However, 90 days of that was conditional. He was conditionally discharged for 2 years. It's then that I realized that we have to do better. That's why I'm glad this award was given to me by Joy and brought me to her. I told her last night that she's a wealth of knowledge on many topics, and I'm glad that I have her as a contact now. I really hope that this recognition can inspire other law enforcement officers to do better. I know I will continue my efforts and continue to be that voice that these animals deserve for many years to come. I'll conclude by saying that one of my favorite quotes is, "We can judge the heart of a man by his treatment of animals." And I'm a firm believer in this. I'm both humbled and appreciative. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Price. And we really appreciate the work you're doing. You represent the best out there in us. And so thank you and congratulations again on your award.
Thank you so much.
And so I just want to kind of tie this together, guys. We've had a rally here. We've had a rally put on by an organization here in Kentucky that does this out of love, Kentuckians Vote for Animals. We've had a day put on to you by Kentuckians Vote for Animals, Kentucky Animal Action, and Making a Difference Now. And so we've got these groups in the state putting out this work to try to improve things. You've got a representative here who has came to you and talked about a bill and trying to make this bill turn into a law. And so that there are laws out there that keep things, animals from being mistreated and done wrong. You've had a person come on here with Christian who gave an example of the things she's seen real time in the field where animals are getting abused and trying to help those animals get out of a bad situation they should never be in. And then we've got a law enforcement officer getting an award for doing the job. The laws have been passed. Now she's got a tool to go out there and stop animal abuse. And so we've kind of tied this all together at our rally today from the top to the bottom to show you guys in action what can happen when we get better animal welfare laws passed in the state of Kentucky. So I just want to say in closing, what can you do now? In the next week to 2 weeks, you're going to see a lot of information about how you can help. So number one thing that everybody has mentioned today is contact your legislators. Find out who your legislators are, call them, email them, let them know that you want to support these animal welfare bills and get stronger animal welfare laws on the books in Kentucky. Keep fighting for the animals because they need you. I want to ask everybody that's tuned in today to make sure to go on to Facebook and follow Kentuckians Vote for Animals, Kentucky Animal Action, and Make a Difference Now. These are folks who are volunteering their time. None of them are getting paid to do this. It's all out of a passion. There are people who get paid to do this, but none of these people are getting paid here. They're all Kentuckians, all volunteering their time, their money, their efforts to be, just putting their heart into it, Kentucky Animals. So go to their Facebook pages. Again, Kentuckians Vote for Animals, Kentucky Animal Action, and Make a Difference Now. Go to their pages, follow them because they're going to be telling you guys, ways you can help in the next weeks. And so make sure you do that. And then most of all, in closing for me, I just want to say thank you to you, people who have tuned in today, for giving your time and making the effort to be here and learn more about how you can help improve animal welfare in the state of Kentucky. And so that's, I'm going to close that out for the Kentuckians Vote for Animals Rally 2021. If anyone else has anything to say in the panel, please chime in. And I thank you guys for hanging out with us. I guess if anybody's got anything else, we're going to close it out. Thank you guys again. We'll see you next year.